Hello, I'm Lou. Some of you may know of me as back on my YouTube channel. I run a lot of Within the Ring of Fire games. And here I am with the man, the Barbarian himself, who has uh, created this wonderful game. I'm here with him to ask him some questions as per his game that he has so lovingly created. Now, Ander, Barbarian Chieftain and
Yes,
God of RPGs himself. How you doing this fine day?
I am doing great, Lou. I appreciate you for being here in the RPG universe upon your main man's channel to bring me the words of the people of the Guru, the Yiddishist of the barbarian horde of all those whose minds need to be freed with RPG wisdom. So, and I thank each and every one of you out there that took your time to send in questions for your main man.
All right, now let's start it off with one of the let's start off by breaking your balls a bit here. So, why did you come up with the species that are in the saga book? Were there other species that didn't make the cut?
All right, well, that's an interesting question. There are initially I was planning to go with 10 species. I wanted to give people a pretty good look because I knew we weren't going to have monsters and men out at the same time. That's irrelevant now, as there are 5 within the Ring of Fire books out at the moment. And I knew we would have a small lag time. I wanted people to have plenty of playable species right off the bat. So for space constraints, I went with 9 different species. Initially, there were there were 2 other. There was definitely going to be a Dracoid species in the book. Initially, it was probably going to be the Sarush. As they develop, the the Typhon developed from a really sort of sinister little shadowy coil, and uh, they kept becoming more. I don't know if I want to use the word lovable, but they became something different than this sort of prototypical horrible evil snake person, Conan-esque deal
Mm.
that was probably their initial point, being an enormous Robert E. Howard fan. And a lot of you out there might not know I was never a J.R. Tolkien fan. I'm a Conan guy through and through. That's really where my that and Labyrinth and Legend really, and the Conan books and comic books and movies, all that kind of stuff really made up my formative fantasy RPG training. And they were very dark, and they slowly became something, while not, well, certainly still sinister, less non-sinister. And at that point, they sort of rivaled the Sarush, which the Sarush were almost a gimme to go into the saga book. But the Typhon ended up appearing in a lot of places. As you try to explain to someone that's probably watching this, probably anyone that's watching this, there are a lot of aspects to game creation that if you haven't created a game, not that very many people ever have, you're not really going to think about it. But it's kind of like making a fantasy world, say for Dungeons and Dragons game or whatever, and you do everything kind of in pieces, and then the pieces you've put together, this piece affects that piece, this piece affects that piece, and things begin to change. So certain things would get hardened, certain things would get softened, and the Typhon started looking like a very realistic challenger to that slot that I had put the Sarushan in the game. And eventually that slot was cut. I really wanted to have something that was vaguely aquatic because I wanted the species to look very different from what you would typically see, like like a Dungeons and Dragons or a Pathfinder type of game. Well, it's the same
Yeah.
thing in a Palladium fantasy. I didn't want to have just those sort of tropes. I want to have things that looked very different from what you would find there as like your base species and or races, whatever they want to call them. So uh, I had a Dracoid in mind that got cut. I wanted something that was amphibious or aquatic. We put the sirens in there. We, of course, humans, although humans themselves really don't earn a spot in there, people are humans and people want to play humans. You get loads of people, particularly into a new game, that really want to play humans. Um, Humans are something in certain sagas that I will limit. I will only allow uh, a certain number of people, maybe just one, maybe two people at most, to play humans because they are not a big part of Kavega Thale in terms of population. Now, if you're playing a game right down in the center of Bayo, right in a royal district, if you will, in the sword, that might certainly seem appropriate and be appropriate. If you're running a hell yeah, a Pelgan game, that's going to be appropriate. But by and large, they didn't really earn a space other than the fact that we ourselves are humans and humans are real and humans often like to play humans. It's always been odd to me because I've never liked to play humans. I never bought human toys when I was a kid. I always bought the weird looking GI Joes or all the fucking Muppet Star Wars figures, you know. So and that sort of tells a lot. And outside of Conan, probably Star Wars: A New Hope, you know, particularly the Cantina scene, really. I mean, that's really evocative of Within the Ring of Fire. And really had an influence. All these strange creatures that don't like each other, and if it came to it, would kill each other without much regret or so forth. All sort of crammed together in this place. And I thought that was really. It always captivated me since I was very young. And I thought that would be really interesting. So you have the Mihangi, who were definitely slotted. They were going to get a slot. As anyone that's played with me will tell you, the Miyangi are hands down my favorite. I love the Miyangi. I love the Miyangi. Their artwork, in initial concept, came out looking a little too elf-like. They're not really. I mean, they're supposed to look. They're fae, but they're not elves, and they're in no way are they supposed to be elfy. They're not in that sort of mindset of being that. Now, I created them and put them in the game because I wanted Mihangi right in the main book. Boom. That was it. There was no other motive than I made this. They're going in the game. You know, like I always say, I guess Gary Gygax like kung fu movies because he put that dumbass monk class in the D&D book. So that one was for me, and I'm just going to go through and kind of tell you what each of them were, and why they were included in there. You have the Freyin, who I put in. I try my best to keep an understanding of what's going on in RPG culture, and at the time I was initially writing the book, I could see a very large swell of females that had entered and were going to be entering into the hobby. It wasn't just going to be a guy's hobby so much anymore, particularly in the immersive aspect of gaming. Really, when I got into Vampire, oh, many, when Vampire was made, and I started playing Vampire, I started noticing there were a lot more female players there, which is a wonderful thing. And female players help attract a larger number of male players, and thus also a larger number of female players. So it's a very, very good thing for RPGs. Um, because it gets more people playing and more creative people playing. I find a lot of the female players that are attracted to games are very attracted to the immersive style. I guess. I mean, we could really go into talking about. I don't want to talk about that too much, but I would say immersive style gaming probably starts with Sandy Peters' Call of Cthulhu, and then gets pushed up to another level with Mark Wright-Hagen's World of Darkness, and then of course to a whole other plane of existence with your main man's air system and Within the Ring of Fire. And if you want that immersive style, this is without a doubt the system and the game for you, the world for you in your fantasy game. So the frame I put in to definitely attract female players, a powerful, feminine, matriarchal culture that has uh, some sexual norms that I thought were kind of interesting, some cosmetic value that I thought would be interesting. And I really wanted to start the Mihangi off as they were the evil and the Freyin were the good guys, and slowly start pulling those strings to where it got in a not fully crossed, but in a much more blurred position, where we started showing the noble savage side of the Mihangi, and we started showing the corrupt, urban side. I don't want to say corporate, but showing this sort of hierarchies, the corruption, the snootiness, the oppressiveness that came in on the Freyine side. So we kind of pull them together, and starting one thing off as objectively good and another thing off as objectively evil, and leaving them there creates a very boring species, and we've all seen that a billion times. That's unbelievably easy to do. So I really wanted to use like a lot of pastels on them, make them or pastels, but a lot of charcoals, and gray them up in a lot of areas, and maybe fleck something a little bit of white here and a little bit of black here, and sort of show some interest there. But I wanted, because with me, I like very hard edged masculine type of characters. They're going to be picking you up, dropping the big bad booty daddy Frankensteiner on you. They're going to be hitting the Dr. Death Steve Williams, Doctor Driver on your ass, or perhaps from the top rope with the Doomsday Device. What a rush! So that's what appeals to me, but that doesn't appeal to everybody for a character. And I wanted to make sure we found stuff for everyone, so everyone came to the table when they sunk their teeth in the book. Went, ooh, that's ooh, and oh god, ooh, I always wanted to do this. This is just what I wanted. This is exactly what I wanted. I've heard that from players over and over and over again. So I was at least marginally successful in that area because I've heard that unsolicited comeback many times. From people that I don't know, the people out there that might follow me on Facebook or on YouTube, or just bought the books, randomly, and tried that out. So that was kind of the base idea behind the Freyine, and of course I'm writing them, so I kind of take an idea from here where I want it, and it gets pulled more in. Okay, if I have that idea, what would I do to make it cool? Because after all, I want people to enjoy the species. They're not there, so you're not. I'm not trying to make a bunch of gully doors for people to play. I want people to go, oh yeah, that's the ticket right there. So that was a big part of the reason behind Freyine and the Cheyenne. They're in later books, to have characters that I saw from my research that were very appealing in their archetype design to a lot of female players. And the feedback that I've had come back since then definitely seems to indicate that was the case. But really, the case there that came in, female players more than anything seem to really love the Kalfar. And the Kalfar are interesting because they had never ever were intended to be in the Saga book. They were supposed to be this little tiny, just few thousand of them, and probably practically killed off was my initial concept of them. The idea kind of came to me from an image. Again, we're getting back into the things that really initially started me. And I probably need to tell you this. This is my mantra going into the game. Everything that I think is cool is going into the book. Everything I think is awesome is going in here. Because if I think it's awesome, someone else is also going to think it's awesome. And if I hit enough things that I think are awesome, it should leave something for just about everyone you're going to think is awesome. Now, I used to watch a show called Voltron, the original Voltron back in the day. And a lot of you are my age. You remember that. And I'm not talking about some vehicle Voltron. I'm talking about some lion Voltron. But you know who I was rooting for? Voltron. I hated Voltron. I wanted to see him roll beast and rip that motherfucker apart and eat that goddamn princess and eat all them other motherfuckers one after another like he was just popping crawdaddies. I couldn't stand the Voltron. Fuck Voltron. And my favorite character in Voltron was, of course, goddamn, what's his name? The fucking purple skinned prince with the fucking ears. And that image had always been with me. And I said, man, I got to figure out something to take this image. And I said, it just didn't really quite work. And then just, I had like hundreds of ideas in my head. And I just sort of popped them. And I would look at things and go, that's not right yet. I'm going to put that away. The idea is going to come to me. It's not right yet. And lo and behold, I took that image and then I broadened it out. Most of the species, I like to have a large number of color variations for eyes, for skin, for hair, different body styles, this sort of thing, so that you can really sink your teeth into it. So it's not just one deal here. As many cultures and creeds as I could fit in to that species as well in different locations. The wonderful thing with the Kalfar is they started off being this tiny little thing, and as the game world populating, right? I'm populating, and you can see the percentage breakdowns of the different areas on almost as if there was a census. And call for a pop up here and here and here and here and here and here and here. And I'm like, oh, God, how can that? Okay. So I start evolving the idea. I start creating more to the idea. I start taking them from this primitive sort of, we're in the arena, we're fighting each other, we're fighting our kinsmen, we're this social Darwinistic people, to businessmen. They are the greatest businessmen in Vega, except for perhaps the Darwin and the Typhon, who would strongly disagree with that. But that empire grew. We needed more of them, so their population continued to expand. So it was a very interesting idea how things came and went. They, of course, came in and they took the spot of the satyrs. Satyrs were initially supposed to be in the saga book. They are in lots of places, particularly across Epiphanul, the northern continent, and they go in boats, they travel, they're always looking all over the place for all sorts of different things. The satyrs, I'm a big student of mythology. Gosh, in fact, in a moment, when we go to the next question, I'm going to go and get just a small number of the mythology books, and I have some of the ones even that I read as a child. And satyrs in D&D, satyrs always flummoxed me. I was like, that's not a satyr. They're like, we're these good, kindly, shy people that live out in the woods, but drink and play music and dance. I'm like, well, okay, those things don't really seem to go together. You read Greek mythology. Let me tell you this. Satyrs of every species, race out there scream, make us player character. There is nothing not player character about a satyr. They're not these shy, gentle individuals. They're grabbing a hold of women and running off with them. They're beating the hell out of people. They're sticking people right in their face. Satyrs give no damns, nor should they. And I kind of took that, and I took this idea of a damaged person, a broken soul, and really wanted to get that over. So that's sort of where they came from. But they ended up in Monsters and Men, which has an enormous amount of additional species in it.
You're forgetting one of the. Don't tell me you're forgetting one of the really the best species that you.
I haven't forgotten it. I don't know what you were going to say.
The Vigish. I mean, how dare you?
How dare you say that
to last? You put humans before them.
Lou's favorite species, for those that don't know by the nature of that question, Lou's favorite species is hands down the Vigish. Lou is a huge Vigish fan, and perhaps rightfully so. But we're not going to talk about the Vigish. We're going to talk about the Men of Mool, and you can go check out my man Sam. Check out his band Shice Squad, the video in the Tongue of Mool. Right there. I mean, they're on the cover. The common man, if you understand, is not humans. Humans are not the default, the base, the common man. They're ogres. And that sort of came across very organically as I was creating these species. There's lots of them that aren't really designed to play well together. But there's so many species. There's someone else counted them up for me. There's about 40 base species you could play. And that's not including all the strange minglings of blood of all sorts of spirits, and God, if you start calculating that up, by a D&D standard, there are literally thousands of species that you could play. Literally thousands of base species you could play in this game. So that being the case, I think it's very. I mean, you could create so many different options, and that, but ogres are the common man. They're working hard for the man. They are. I don't know you have some questions coming up about them, so I'm not going to go too much into ogres. What they're big, tall, they're loud. I mean, it's me shaving down and painted red. No, I mean, they're far savager than people are. Even myself, they're very vile and violent. And they have a tremendously bad side, but they have a tremendously good side. But they're set upon. They're the Al Bundys of the world. They're down on their luck. They can't get a break. You know, but there's so much. They're this vile, often vile, violent, cannibalistic creature, but they get shit on so much that they generate this enormous amount of sympathy where they come into being something that people quite uh, overlook that. You know, they're like, okay, this is, I mean, as players, uh, the character becomes very interesting in that regard, and they're not this sort of shunned monster because Kavega Thale is an incredibly dark world. It's grimy and vicious. It's you know Hyperborea turned up 20 times. It's uh, a really grimy, dirty, dark fantasy place, and that's quite what I love. But there's some areas of brilliant sunlight in there, and I think a world for a game needs to have dark fantasy. Look at something like Forgotten Realms, which I do like. I like Forgotten Realms. You can see Forgotten Realms video multiples on my channel. But who needs good guys? Why do you need heroes in Forgotten Realms? Boy, if you have a hero, that just being a hero is going to spotlight you right off the bat, and then to me that makes it so much more rewarding. I mean, you can bring these characters into Ravenloft. They're looking around like, "Hey, this is a good place to be. That's a good place to live right here." Only undead things are trying to eat us. Phenomenal. Um, yeah, I think that the ogres became the common man. That's why we see them on the front of the book. They're the default. Humans are the default in most games. They're absolutely not your default in this game. And I took really, I think, a starkly realistic look at humans. I don't like, we are the good guys. They had to save everyone. No, dude, we're probably not. Let's just be real about that. If we roll up in a place and all these other species have been around forever, we probably are going to fucking do some bad things to them. I don't know if you ever read a history book, but I've read a few in my day. And yeah, so what will we do to things that weren't us? Um, I can only imagine. And I did. And I wrote it down. So, you have that. You have the Vigish. The Vigish are noble. This they're really sort of the children of a lot of fathers. A very masculine, patriarchal culture, brutal, vicious, but militaristic. They have some influence from the initial idea. The Vigish were around from this was a fantasy game that I created using, gosh, I mean, for many years. Uh, Within the Ring of Fire running, and then I just added. I broke it up completely, sorted out the pieces that were not necessary. I removed a lot of things that were way too encumbered. I made languages really streamlined and simple. This is what the gods speak. They put it in your head when you're born. Everyone in the world speaks that because the gods put it in their head. There you go. Boom. Gone. Done. As opposed to the very long list, I think there were somewhere around 700 languages initially in my game. So I said, well, let's go a different way with that. That might be a little too complex, but I'm kind of getting off track here. But the Vigish were this noble hammer. I mean, they're part Roman centurions and senators and praetors, and they're part very early like Muslims, and that old pre-Muslim Arab and Persian world. A lot of them and a lot of their mystique and mythos comes from that. Comes from the Romans, the Byzantines, and we have so it's a multitude of inspirations. There's a lot of real world inspiration, as you can see from looking at the things, but then I added wholesale fantasy stuff. I'm going to run through, I guess, real quick what the species were as well there. But I carved them up into houses. They have an initial house, and I wanted to put the things not common. It always drove me nuts. That's a vampire that showed up in D&D. Gee, let me guess. Is he a human? Like the werewolf and the ghoul and the zombie lord and the ghoul lord and the wraith and the white. Oh, gee, yeah, whatever fucking thought. If you even get a goddamn elf, it's like, fucking shocking. So I wanted to not really do that. Our first vampires are Freyeen, our first werewolves are Vigish, as our first ghouls. So I thought that would be very different, very take, a non-humanistic take, which I think appeals to a lot of people. The Vigish, um, very militaristic. Oh, and of course, there's a bit of influence there to the Klingons. They very much have some Klingon culture there. Very much some war. I think Michael Dorn is just a fantastic voice actor. I mean, he's such a wonderful narrator. I'm not a huge Star Trek fan, but I did watch some of the Next Generation because we didn't have cable back then, and it came on at a very convenient time. So I watched a good amount of that. The first, I don't know, till they did the first, I think, Angle with the Borg. I don't think I saw the last few seasons of it. At least that's my mindset of it. It's not a show I know perfectly, but I did see those episodes, and the weapons, the martialness, the kind of holding in your rage and trying to focus. I really wanted to bring that across in the Vigish show, so they definitely had some influence there. Um, and let's see here. Oh, orcs.
Oh,
Yeah,
going to
orcs.
orcs.
What's that?
You're going to orcs. Leaving the best for last, I see.
Let me talk to orcs about orcs for just a second. Orcs were this primordial, ancient thing that's so ancient it looks at you like, poor child. It's sad that you have done so little. Um, and they try to help you. The orcs are really legitimately kind of the good guys within the Ring of Fire, which might kind of spoil some other things just a tiny bit. But they're they're just not bad. They're just not bad dudes. Um, and the world wasn't that fucked up until everyone else rolled around. So the orcs, and I really see the eastern coast and that sort of strip one up there is very similar in my mind to Ireland. I've been to Ireland before, and I see it as like this huge cliffs and rocky grounds, and I see all this ancient stuff there. Like Drumbeig and standing stone circles and all this old like fucking paganistic witchcraft kind of deal that's so alien to the followers of the gods, and the orcs have no real interest in that. And what are you going to do? Roll up on them? Well, that didn't work well for the Vigish when they tried, because there are unfathomably ancient creatures there, and there are a lot of status 10 heads sitting in certain fucking stone storage areas that will be brought back with a necromantic ability. So the orcs definitely have some influences. They're very largely. I almost didn't use the word orc, but I like the word orc, and it's a very fantasy word. And I thought, why not make the orcs kind of the good guys? I mean, if anywhere, why not in my game? And they don't look that much like orcs. And I think Tim Harper, my good buddy there at fucking Dirty Hobbit, pointed out that in his review of the game, which you should check out, that the outside of the name orc, there's not that much orcish about them. They're very connected to the earth. They're very earth centric. There's just a tiny smidge of like American tribal or Native American or American Indian. I know we have a worldwide audience. I don't want to confuse them with the terms I'm using there. Flavor, as well as a fairly large Irish flavor to them, but in a very different way. But again, I mean, they were that's sort of those real world aspects are sort of the bowl I put these things in, and then I just filled them with all sorts of fruits of my imagination. So they're not much like that, but there's a small bit of the clay I threw into the pot is from that aspect. Much like the Bobbin Shee are Scottish and the Mihan Gee are Irish. We're going to talk about the Farum to end things off, but they came off very with a very well, kind of a mixed bag. Well, I'll talk about that in a second. But the Freyne had a very mix of Nordic and Egyptian culture with a very strong feminine undertone. Whereas, say, like Mihungi are very egalitarian. That's something I try to keep. I wanted to make some things very masculine, some things very feminine, some things androgynous, some things egalitarian, and I thought that, particularly with our modern eye, could come across very interesting and cause people to look at the species very differently and inject some more realism into them, which I think really is always the goal. And the goal was never to make everyone like every species. It was to find something that everyone would like, and hopefully it does it for all you out there watching. So let's talk about the Ferrum for just a minute before we go to the next question. Then we will, I promise, we'll get to question number 2 eventually, guys. And I see there's a whole bunch of you out there watching. We love having you guys here. So the Ferrum were really the old traditional dwarf, right? But the dwarf raises a whole bunch of questions that always bug the shit out of me because they don't have answers. I don't like questions that don't have answers. Like, why the fuck does a dwarf have a beard? I don't ask people that. I say, why the fuck does a dwarf have a beard? And they go, and I heard tons of answers, and they all sucked ass. Well, I said, all right, let's take a dwarf, because lots of people like to play dwarfs. I don't, but a lot of people do. And let's start going through them. And as I went through everything, see, the Ferrum I made very differently from the other species. They were wholesale. Their wholesale start as a D&D dwarf. And I did that very much on purpose because I wanted to make each thing different. And if I start the things in different places, they're going to feel different upon your actual play of them. So I said, all right, how do we take a D&D dwarf, which I personally find dull as fuck, and make it interesting to me? And then hopefully by proxy to a lot of other people. And those that's not proxied, interestingly, to those that initially like that will probably still enjoy the idea we have there. Now, I took the beard and I said, all right, let's make a story about the beard. Why do they have beards? And of course, that's well documented in the books. I'm not going to run through that too much, but just something as simple as that, if they have a beard or they're clean shaven, tells an enormous story. And that's something I try to drive home over and over and over again. Take the tiny things and create a wonderful story with that. People try to take ridiculous things. Oh, I have a fucking meteor tip spear and my fucking enchanted ball sack, and a dragon was my neighbor when I was a kid. It's fucking ridiculous. Do you need that to tell a story? No. Why do you have a beard? And let's make that a big deal. Why is your hair pink? Let's make that a big deal. I wanted to take the smallest of things and show how you could tell immensely important stories from fucking eye color, from hair color, from having facial hair or not, and from having run and played within the Ring of Fire. That definitely worked, and I've had a lot of compliments and commentary from people on just how well that worked. So with the dwarfs, I said, okay, well, we got to find a name for them. They can't be dwarfs. I think the word dwarf, to me, it's always sounded like the stupidest name. It's like, except for halfling. Halfling is the worst. Gnome sounds like a real creature, right? It's a real mythological creature, but dwarf? No. That's like a little dude, little people. That's ridiculous. I don't dig it. I don't dig that name for a fantasy creature. So I said, all right, well, what can we call them? Oh, what are they? Oh, they're the people of iron. Okay, well, we have something here. And now we start changing them internally. In D&D, a dwarf is just a little human, basically, with a beard. And he's whiter, and he probably smells bad, and he's slow to trust you, and he's gruff and surly. Well, that's not enough for me, dude. That's really just a little. That's a broad dude with a short man complex. It works out a lot. I used to be a big gym rat. I've met a ton of those dudes. A lot of them have beards. So I defied him of the difference between that dude that's fucking literally 5 foot tall and that dwarf. What, 6 inches? No, that's not enough. This guy might not have a battle axe, but he's definitely got a lot of dumbbells. So I never thought there was enough. They come across as just way too human to me. Well, let's go and look at physiology. Let's change them. Let's change literally what is inside of their body. Let's double their weight because their body has enormous amounts of iron in it. Their bone structure is different. Their body is constructed essentially internally of a lot of metal. and they have special connections to this metal. They have a rich and nuanced history that makes them very distinctly not human. And why are they gruff? Why do they have these issues? Were they born that way? No. Fair weren't born that way. They've been horribly shit on and abandoned by, in their minds, abandoned by their creator. They're goddamn mad. Stay put. Which, of course, is officially the way that they talk now, in honor of the dirtiest of the dirty dozens, the dozens of dirt. One of the all-time greats in the RPG mind, that man Phil, definitely reinvigorating them. So we definitely stripped them away of that Scottish aspect that was fucking killing me, by the way, to a very, very different, broken sort of idea. People who are sad and banished and trodden, and they're the real underdog story. There, people are speculating that they'll just go out of existence. So you got your ogres of the common man. You have your Farum as this just beat down, on its last legs loser that just can't take another. But he's getting up. His nose is broken. His teeth are knocked out. Blood's pouring from him. He's been pummeled to a pulp, and he's standing up and go, "That all you got there, boy? That all you could? That ain't gonna be enough for me." Mm-mm. So you have that, and eventually, people can really get behind that. So I think with changing the way they present, with the way they talk, adding the fact that to most species, they smell fucking horrible. Why do they have a beard? And asking all those nuanced questions was kind of the way I went through these. But I tried to go through each species differently, and I wanted them to not seem the same. I wanted them to come from a different mental standpoint instead of writing 9 things that all look the same. So hopefully, that comes across, and that provides additional level of interest. But go ahead to your second question there, my man Lou.
A wonderful answer. That was a tremendous answer for a tremendous question. Now, I think my next question you kind of answered, but I feel like maybe you could reiterate a bit more or talk a little bit more about this. Um, it seems like it was a very obvious, direct decision in making these species, at least the ones in the saga book. Most of them don't like each other, right? You had noted that they don't like each other, and they'll off one another just over their own, so their own could get over on them. But was this, to gear the world, to gear your vision of this entire line more towards that, darker aspect, or mature sort of type of game that you were aiming for? Was that like one of the main reasons why you had the species always just not liking each other?
Absolutely, that was a very conscious decision. I wanted to represent the fact that these species are not the get along gang. I did not want people. I really didn't want people to trying to play Dungeons and Dragons within the Ring of Fire. It's not Dungeons and Dragons, and it's not supposed to be played like Dungeons and Dragons. Chapter 1 definitely goes over and shows you how to play it and maximize it. And if that chapter 1 is enough, fucking just subscribe to Lou's channel and start watching videos. You Oh, I think I got hung out to dry there. All right, so apologize for that. Like I was saying there, hopefully I don't repeat myself. Chapter 1 of the saga book, role playing, it shows you how a Within Ring of Fire game is, in my mind, supposed to be put together. Now, if you guys, whatever you're putting together, if people are having a good time, if they're getting immersed, if they're enjoying the role playing, that's what's fucking awesome. But I didn't design the game to be Dungeons and Dragons. There's absolutely no reason in a Within the Ring of Fire saga that you couldn't all be the same species, first of all. But let's to examine that. Yes, I definitely wanted to show that the species do not get along. I did not want it to be get along gang. I did not want it to be this trite cliche fantasy thing that's been done to death. I wanted to show there's species that are brutal, that are vicious, that will kill each other. And when you create that focus for a saga, there is no reason you can't bring any species, a member of any species, to work with a member of any other species. Now, religions can make that can often not work, but that's what lying's for, and that often works too. So you can really play a lot of different things And the way it's created, instead of you all meet in a bar and you see one character has a +9 Bastard Sword and he's also a Tarrasque with man-like intelligence, and there's an Iron Golem and a Kinder and fucking a Megatron from Transformers. He's there too, and he's got a halberd of fucking keyed slang. Um, instead of that kind of nonsense, it's about telling a story. It's about telling a story of the construction of a religion. We have bonding material. Well, that Frayne and that Mihangi might fucking not be able to stand each other or that Kolfar, but they're bound by the ties of religion, and they might still fuck each other up or kill each other, but maybe they won't because they're reaching in that religion. Or you're building a city and you throw things in that are pushing all these people together. You're not that quick to want to kill your neighbor when there's a whole bunch of other things out there that want to kill you, and maybe just maybe he doesn't. So when you start putting those things together, I can come up with ideas, and you can read Fate Wine, which should really help cement that you can bring the species together, often in many different ways. But at the same time, a lot of concepts aren't going to work together, and I want to array for enormous amounts of concepts. It's not a game to play good aligned people. You can, you do not have to. There are countless numbers of possibilities. And I want to leave Flame Tenders open to explore and create a wonderful story. The Flame Tender tells you, look, I got this core idea, make things that work with it. And then they look at your catalyst and decide if that works or not, and they tell you to adjust or change or make something different. Or damn, that's perfect. And if they give you a good core idea and you really shoot to hit it, probably everything's going to be able to work with it. But I wanted to highlight the fact that if you take a group, right, you put them in a base book and you say, these guys all get along, they're doing this deal. There may be just some minor tensions or whatever, but they pretty much get along. Elves and dwarves, but they still kind of get along. Well, all of a sudden, that vilifies everything else. That vilifies your goblins and your ogres and your orcs or your trolls or your fucking lion people or whatever isn't in the clique. So instead of putting like one sect together, and I could draw talking about these Cheyenne and these Marduk and the Frayne and fucking this, that, and the other thing, or line it up a different way. It gives you different base entry points, and then of course you go into um, monsters and men, and you will find so much stuff that'll work. It's very difficult to be able to create a saga that doesn't have species. Again, it's not like a Dungeons and Dragons where they shoehorn you into playing those 6 or 7 races, and it's kind of hard if you really are playing one of those games to work most other things in. You're like, kill it, which can happen to a degree in certain places in Kavega Thale without a doubt. But the book is devised to be an apparatus to allow you to tell any story in Kavega Thale, not just let's get magic swords and go out and killing hobo style and taking over all the plunder we can get. It's getting into the nuance, the mythology, the religion, the politics, the anthropology. Explore these ancient crushed civilizations as remains. In Monsters and Men, there's a Book of the Dead that goes through enormous numbers of species, and you can bring all that stuff in. You can explore different cults and heresies and forgotten gods. There's so many different things you can do there, and I thought that would really show that this is not a standard sort of role playing game. This is something different, and hopefully you will approach it differently. And hopefully, from that different approach, you'll find just a platform to tell that wonderfully cinematic, immersive story that your players are going to love above really anything else. So that's my answer there. So time for questions.
Now to step a little bit away from your decisions on the relations between species, your creation process of species, step away from that and think of the world. How did you come to design the world of Kvegathel in such a well, frankly, it's quite strange in comparison to what the standard or what one would normally think of when they think of a world. They think of it as a sphere, a globe. But Kvegathel is much different than that. And if you could talk a little bit of how that came to be, making those decisions.
Absolutely. I wanted to make sure that we establish right off the bat that the paradigm here is not of our scientific universe. It's not. It doesn't comply to any of those norms. It complies to the will of the elder creators and then of the holders of the 77 thrones. They create what reality is. It's not your ideas or thoughts, it's what they want it to be, to lesser and greater degrees depending on their power. So I said, all right. I had a few core ideas uh, from my initial, my homeroom games long before it was even called Within the Ring of Fire. But I had these ideas, right, that there was this great flame at the end of the world. I had these ideas that land itself was alive, and that the sky was as well, and there were different divisions, a lower and a higher heaven, and these sort of things, and that many of these strange mythic places you could get to, just like you could in Greek mythology. You could literally wander into the underworld, and I thought that was really fascinating. And we see, several heroes journeying into the underworld, and why not create a hell capable of that? And it took a long time because I basically took everything that I ever thought that I did or my players did that was cool in a role playing game, and then loads of other influences. A lot of it from Greco-Roman mythology, Norse mythology, Egyptian mythology, Syrian mythology, Babylonian mythology, Irish mythology, various Eastern European and Russian mythologies, as well as African and American Indian, of course Indian from India. Uh, Not that much. I've never been a big reader or of a huge interest in Far East Asian mythology. It's just not my deal. Pretty much after India, from India to America that way. It's really where most of my influence. Although I mean, there are a few bits here and there that definitely come from the Orient and from the Polynesian islands and places like that. So I drew on all these different mythological cycles, and I wanted like ideas like the world is on the back of a giant turtle that's moving through space. I said, well, and I kind of thought about that idea, and I said, well, all right, let's make the world itself a character. If I give you a flat ball that's just like Earth, it's not interesting at all. You're like, oh, there's a flat ball, it's just like Earth. That's not interesting. So let's, again, just like I said, like with hair color or eye color or facial hair, let's make that interesting, or at least let's try to. And if we could tell a story out of that, well, we got the goddamn creation of the world. Well, shit, I think we can make a story there. And there's a lot of I really like. And a lot of people might not know that I'm part Cherokee. I mean enough to like be part of the Cherokee tribe. Um, so that being the case, I grew up with a lot of Native American mythology, and I really enjoyed a lot of it. But even like as a kid, we're just reading the books and stuff. A lot of it had a really kind of a really weird like sexuality to it. Like there was this one where this brother or half brother is like molesting his sister when the lights go off in this tent, and then she gets all furious and like cuts her breast off and throws them at him, and then that's supposed to be like one of the constellations, right? And that was always something that kind of stuck with me. I was like, well, that was weird. It was very weird to me. And I said, well, with an idea like that, how about? And there's so much. If you're not reading them from like a little kid's perspective, there's so much fucking sex and so much and weird, creepy shit too in mythology. And I said that has to be part of this game because if you look at other games, right, it's all sanitized. It's super fucking sanitized, and this is not a sanitized game. Though I did leave out some things that might have been, objectionable. The idea of these ancient cosmic forces coming together, and when they got on top of each other, they're like, "Ooh, sensation! I like sensation," and that literally leads to fornication, an orgy of that created the world. So we have sex creating a world, which in every mythology, there's something like that. Sex creating the peoples, creating this or that. That's always that primal force of masculinity and femininity, of a hermaphroditic union. And I thought that'd be a really interesting way to describe what these elements were, because I liked the idea initially of worshiping elements, worshiping the sun and the moon and the wind and the ocean, the ground, the stone. I thought that would be very interesting. So I wanted to bring that in and really have that well represented. Uh, and just mine those old myths and then take them and reimagine them in my mind. And I think that it really produced a very different, interesting world. Uh, the Void, which I'm probably going to be very avoiding questions on, the Void is extremely well developed in my mind, as is Aramon, and I'm going to be careful not to. I don't want to give you guys everything. A lot of things are still for here to be slowly let out, and perhaps some things to be allowed to be kept mysteries for you guys. Because a lot of players really like that. They like that mystery, which I think is very, very key. Because then, as a game master, you can develop what you want. There's no one to say, "Well, I wasn't right. It's this way," because it's not. It's left open to you. Um, so I wanted to make a world that had the ability to be very different. I wanted to make a huge underworld. That was a big thing. I wanted to literally have hell as part of it. I wanted to have moons that were actually the open eyes of cosmic fucking entropy, annihilation, destruction, just looking down on you. I wanted to have a sun that had lost. Good has lost. This isn't your typical story. Good has lost to a degree, but not enough that there's nothing here yet. So good has won as well. But we see that dead sun floating in the sky. We see those hateful eyes staring down from the heavens, looking at you oppressively. We see forests, and the trees have meanings. There's a spiritual and a material connection to all these things, and an interlay and a connection to the divinities that weaves together to create mythology. It's something that I've always found very lacking in games, is the lack of mythology. So I wanted to mythologize an enormous amount of different aspects of the reality, and then weave that together to create a very believable and hopefully realistic world. So I also didn't want it to be impossibly big, so it's a bit smaller. We have 3 continents, which this was sort of a almost a space cutting idea, as make it just a bit smaller. So there's less you have to learn, because there's a tremendous amount of nuance and intricacy to all this. And I still have many more books coming out, and trying to give you everything I have in here. Like, the pages just start running out way before the ideas do. So I wanted that to really be something that you could sink your teeth into and have a lot of interest in the complexity. And I like the idea of a flat Earth, because we're not going to be able to see everything because of obstructions and just limitations on sight. Imagine, right? Behemoth rocks the ground below. There's tremors, there's earthquakes for days on end, and the ground ruptures. Imagine how far away on a flat world it would be before you couldn't see something that was a mile long and that was hundreds upon hundreds of feet high and was moving. And I just think that's like an awe-inspiring scene. Or to be up somewhere so high that maybe just out in the distance you can see those flames that circle around the world. And I thought that would be something very interesting to know that Morgul, a circle, and the circle is such a powerful religious symbol. I really wanted to integrate that, which I thought would come off well. So I mean, there's your answer for that. So
And you began to dip into my next question. We've talked about species, we've talked about their relations, we've talked about the creation of the world. Now, what about the real players in this game? The divinities. You've made a vast, almost similar to perhaps how you went about creating species in this game. You went about making the divine or these divinity personalities have a vast degree of difference between one another. If you'd like to perhaps discuss a bit more, I know you've talked a bit about mythology and take it from real world um, uh, sort of history. But how did you come to well create such a vast and dense work in the divinities in this game?
Well, thank you for asking that, Lou. Um, in fact, well, at some point before the videos, I'll grab some of the books. But since I'm 3 years old, right, I'm going. I can't even read them. I'm going to the library, the Grissom Library, public library, you understand. And my parents would take me there, and I'd pick out books. And all I wanted them to read me about was monsters and mythology. That's it. I loved it. They would grab me the books, or I would pick out Greek mythology. I'm 4 years old now. And, this is going back as far as I can remember. Greek mythology, Norse mythology, Egyptian mythology, anything I could get my hands on, old Irish folk tales, all of it, and anything on monsters, whether it was old like Hammer Horror or MGM or I don't remember too much of the sci-fi, but just books that collected monsters and told all these things about monsters. I really dug that, particularly if it wasn't put as like a kiddie kind of way. It was more, you know, that a grown up could read, and my son is exactly the same way. He's like the Boba to my Django. So it's very easy and fun to share with him. And I was sitting there and read him a lot of mythology books, just one after another until he would, finally squirm away. And he would sit there and listen to a lot of these things. I mean, we live sometimes literally an hour and a half. I'd be reading him a book out loud, which let me do two things at one time. I'm entertaining and bonding with my son, reading, educating him, explaining this stuff to him, and um, uh, finding new mythology that I may never have experienced or uh, reigniting my mind. I was just doing this huge information dump to feed my brain so I could really produce. So there's a lot of gods that I really enjoy. Um, and I wanted to get them across in the game. So hold on for 1 second.
All right. Now, we are here talking about, of course, Within the Ring of Fire for those of you new that have joined us.
Sorry about that. I had to take care of something momentarily. So I impregnated my mind with so much of this old theological knowledge, of this mythological knowledge, and again, I mean, the stories from anywhere, I love them. The old African tribal tales, the Aesop's fables, just anything my mind could get a hold of. I loved, but I loved, the stories of gods, of spirits, of Coyote, of Loki, of Zeus and Odin and Gilgamesh, all of these things. God, I loved them so much, and I love them now, and I'm gonna keep loving them. So they really got in my mind, and I have a degree. To say my love from the time I'm 3, I have a degree in philosophy, religious studies. One of my 2 degrees is in that. I have very, very thoroughly studied real world religion as well as the mythologies. I've read all of the major holy scriptures of all the world religions. That's really a passion for me. So you can see influences there. I've read the Bible cover to cover 3 times and loads of other pieces in it. Multiple, like Genesis, I've read who knows how many times I've read Genesis, many times. Um, and I love things like the mythology, particularly. I'm not a big fan of the New Testament, but I love the Old Testament. And the sons of heaven looked upon the daughters of man, and they found them fair, and they did lay with them, and from them sprang a race of bronze giants, the Nephilim. It's things like that, where like, wow, that's really neat. So let's bring that in. Let's talk about that. Let's have Nephilim. Let's have a behemoth. Let's have a leviathan. Let's bring these sort of ideas together, and it's also another one of my lifelong loves. Well, not now because I've fucking ruined it. In the last gosh, it's a little over 10 years. But I used to be an enormous pro wrestling fan. I know, you would never guess that. There's nothing about me or my channel that would have ever led any of you to think I was a huge professional wrestling fan. A fucking shocker, right? But like the honky tonk man, baby, I'm gonna shake, rattle, and roll your very soul. So I wanted to bring the ideas of these different religious figures, and in mythology, there are a lot of like religious archetypes, you know, and I really wanted to show some of like I really like Joseph Campbell, and I wanted to go into to a lot of these different um, archetypes of mythology, of the Rainmaker and the Thunderlord, of the crone, and of the virgin, of the whore, of the earth mother. I wanted to bring all this stuff in, and I wanted to use some of the characteristics of these divinities. And of course, I sparingly used a few real names, and we have Bacchus, because I wanted to have this corresponding nymphs, and we have Ahriman and Hormazda because we fucking love Zoroastrianism. That's hands down my favorite real world religion. If I had to be one of them, it would be a Zoroastrian. But I will remain the raging atheist that I am. That being said, it's a very interesting religion. If you've never studied it, I would recommend taking a look at it, just for the tremendous impact it had on Christianity and Islam. I mean, enormous impact. Uh, perhaps even exceeding what Judaism actually did. But those were just great inspirations for me. The Quran, the Bible, old uh, mythology of all types. I just mined all that, and then I started creating my own archetypes. Well, what is my storm god, or in my case, storm goddess, Fatash? But that's just I looked at every aspect of nature that I could inside of the world, everything. Every passion and emotion, every aspect of what reality is, and I tried to classify that and put it into a dominion of a divinity. And even with people really carefully going through them, there's not many I missed, apparently, because I've had some people that are real smart look through them and come up with a very paltry amount of things. So I was quite pleased with that. Now, a divinity is a spirit that becomes more powerful. It becomes the spiritual um, reflection, the spiritual personification is probably a better word, of aspects of passions, of emotions, of happenings, of things, of places, of spaces, and uh, animals and plants and even bacteria. So all of that, get into it and mythologize it. I tried to mythologize. I just tried to go crazy through there. And we look at even documents like, the Old Testament and even the New Testament. Disease is a demon. Oh, now that's what I'm talking about. Take that and when you throw it back to the Bible, and when I made the pro wrestling comment, I meant to bring that up. There's a great fucking pro wrestler, and what made him great were his interviews. He's probably one of the top 5 interviews of all time. His name is Jake the Snake Roberts, and he would, when everyone screamed, he would just take that voice and bring it down, and he would quote things from the Bible, but the bad things, the things that make you think, the fire and brimstone kind of stuff, the Book of Revelation sort of things. And it'd be things that even if you didn't really read it, you might have heard before, and it's in your mind and it's triggering. So you've already heard it before, but you don't know where you heard it in a way, and it produces a whole subliminal sort of a deal. And I really wanted to, and he's explained that subsequently. And I said, boy, as a kid, wow, that's fucking right on. I remember that, and that really captivated me. So why not use that same trick? Why not take those mythological archetypes and aspects and bring them in, and not in this high gloss, but in this dirty fucking way, and make it gritty and grimy, and bring it and interject it. And then people, when they look at it, they don't go, oh, well, that's, they go, ooh, because it already has this sort of pedigree to it that they might not know where or why, but it sort of rattle around in the brain, like, or the people that do, they're like, ooh, okay, this guy, he knows something. He knows something about what he's talking about. So I thought that would really be the key there, to create a completely interwoven mythology. Why does it rain? What is rain? Why do people get sick? What have they done? And answer these sort of questions from a primitive mind, and bring it forward, and then weave a tapestry. It's always been the most embarrassing point for me when, so looking at Dungeons and Dragons as an example, and looking at the mythologies that are offered by Greyhawk or Forgotten Realms or Dragonlance, and just fucking cringing because of the utter lack of mythology they have. The mythology, particularly Forgotten Realms, which I know the best, is fucking pathetic. It's, here's a bunch of gods, and they don't know, they do something, but they don't really fuck with each other, but except for this one time when they did. It's like, really? You bring up some little needly points, but it's not much mythology there. It's not working in. When I saw what they wrote, they said Tempest thinks Soon is foolish and doesn't want to fuck with her. I'm like, dude, Tempest is like the most badass dude you have, and Soon is the hottest chick. I'm sorry, but he's going off in his fucking muscle car with her fucking splayed on the top like Tawny Katane. I mean, let's fucking be real. That's definitely, I think the way you look at that, and definitely as a huge Whitesnake fan, that is definitely sort of the image of Cinder. That's just fucking Tawny Katane on the front of a fucking muscle car. If we know that, then that's possibly my favorite song. I fucking love that song. But great theme music too. So to me, it was about building this non-homogenized deal, like coming at from different angles. You have an angel, you have trolls, you have gods, you have elder creators, you have apotheoses, and these things have their own agendas. So you have to kind of work together. If it's one against an enormous amount, you might have a bad day. But if you can work together with others, you can start building your agenda. So it becomes a sort of divine senate or divine senates in ways. It really can produce so much politics, so much tremendous interest there for me, and hopefully the mythology comes across to the readers as being immersive. I think that that's, and if you've seen the campaign world builder videos that I've done, that's exactly where I start. I start with the divine, and I think if you start a world anywhere else, it's rough. And when I go to play someone's game, if they're talking about, one of the first things I ask them in a fantasy game is, all right, well, what are your gods like? And they go, oh, we'll just use whatever you want. I go, okay. And I don't play because I know the world. I know I won't be able to believe in the world because the level of nuance and detail that I need to sustain the illusion. And after all, I play for the illusion. Otherwise, we're just talking to each other in weird voices and rolling dice. So, next question, bro.
Now, to step away a bit from, I know you've talked at length about your creation process of the game world, but what about this sort of the game itself? How players, how flame tenders or game masters can run a game, and let's go into a little bit about that. Namely, how or where did you get the idea of incorporating soliloquies into your game.
Just grabbing something to show the people there. So the first, I got the soliloquies part. The first part, I didn't. I don't know if I could. You kind of clarify that a bit? I was a little confused with what you were saying there.
Just pulling the conversation a bit more towards about how players and flame tenders, or how the game in general is to be played, or how it's geared to be played. Namely, we'll begin with soliloquies.
All right. Well, okay. I'll start with soliloquies then. Soliloquies are a concept that I created. I've never seen that. In fact, subsequently, I've still not yet seen that in any other RPG ever. So I take great pride in having come up with that concept, which I would suspect to see is as soon as other RPG inventors, creators really get a look at this work, I would expect to see that being taken. I created that. My buddy Barbarian Horde, Travis and Cello, he's run this Vampire the Masquerade game. 4 years it went on, playing a Cappadocian knight named Sir Jonathan of York. And I don't know, we started, I don't know, I'm not even sure, 1100, something like that. Now, I have all these great ideas in my head, all this, because I play in here, all this, and he's going on, and he's a very good game master, but he can be long-winded, and he's doing this whole deal, and I'm like, he doesn't, because what, we're here, right, and I'm coming up with these ideas and these plots and these ideas, but there was no way in the game to sounding board that out other than to just walk around and start talking like, I was a lunatic, which I wouldn't do. I was a Cappadocian. I kept my secrets tight-lipped, So it came to me. I said, well, gosh, why don't I use, the same sort of tactics that we're seeing in, I'm my degree is in English, so seen a lot of Shakespeare plays, read, I want to say all of his plays, but the idea of soliloquies from those and some other sources, I was like, well, shit, and it just sort of clicked. I said, well, why don't I use soliloquies? I can give you the internal monologue, the drama, the character's perspective in a way that I can't just through role playing. And particularly when we actually play and really do legitimately have an audience, I remember we would talk years ago about the audience as if we had an audience, not that we did, but that we should be playing in a way towards that as well, as if it was a TV show or something to mimic that. And I'm a real big fan of making. I hate clunky mechanics. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. And I can't stand those. But with soliloquies, it's about giving you as a player. It gives everyone perfect spotlight. When you're soliloquying, you have a perfect spotlight. You can call for them any time in the game. They hit your music and wait and make that motherfucker flame tender play your music. Don't walk out like you were Virgil's, like you were Virgil from the WWF. You walk out like you was Virgil Runnels, that man, Dusty Rose, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Americana Dream. Because it gives you a spotlight. Everyone's looking at you. Everyone's waiting to hear what you have to say, what important, interesting revelations your mind will come up with. And you can foreshadow things in a whole other way through your soliloquies. You can reveal to the players all kinds of things, about your character. And I always like to build up a few sessions before I reveal it. I ain't revealing nothing that first session. I reveal none of it. You'd be lucky if I reveal my name to you. So I want to build that up. I want to produce certain things. I'm big on producing aspects of characters. This is really advanced role playing stuff. Producing character aspects, and there's a video on that. It's something you should probably watch if you think you might need a hand to get to that absolute apex of role playing at your table and wowing people. But producing your character is a phenomenal way to really make a game phenomenal that you're in. Soliloquies are another. Bring it to your group. It works for every single role-playing game out there. You can use it. It's great in an angsty kind of vampire-y game, and it's great in a hard-hitting dungeon crawling fucking standard or procedure D&D game. As long as it's a game where people role play. If it's a gameplay game, forget about it. Soliloquies aren't for that group. If it's a role-playing game, soliloquies should be the bread and butter. You understand? I'm talking about socks for supper. Now, in terms of the game itself and the system, what I wanted to design the system to do, and I had a few people ask me because they didn't quite get the actual way the system is to run. You can watch Lou's games and see how it comes across. Go subscribe to his channel. That's something you do. You owe yourself that joy, and there are enormous amounts of games he has. If you looked at the top 1,000 live plays of role playing games on YouTube, his name would just be dotted all over that list towards the upper spectrum, if you understand. I mean, just over and over. Definitely some top 10 games from Lou on there that you're gonna, if you enjoy watching. I mean, I have people that they see that's their favorite thing. These games. They say we don't even care about TV. We want to watch that instead. Numerous people hit me up with those sort of comments. That's their show. That's their favorite thing. That's 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever it is. And live plays aren't for everybody. But if you haven't watched one, I was just watching one of those. And if you like them, these are the ones you want to do. There's a lot of people out there, quite frankly, don't know what they're doing with role playing games. And Lou absolutely does. He's an A plus on a scale of only possibly an A. He somehow wiggles out a plus and an extra plus beside that. So you won't go wrong with that. And I wanted the game to be a platform. The mechanics to be a platform to produce what I wanted in any game. And what I want in a game is to have it run across like a movie. It always drove me nuts when I played clunkier games because it's too delayed and it's too scene filled, and I did 3 damage to that kobold who actually has 4 hit points. I've never ever seen anyone happy when that happened, and I've seen it happen more times than I would care to. No, sort that bitch ass out. I'm the motherfucking star, son. I'm finna whoop that ass. Let me whoop that ass. Let me build me up on jabronis. Just like, again, a lot of it is old school Southern style booking, pro wrestling style that influences my game running. And you have that booking style, and you book it up, and you put the you build the heat on the bad guys, you build the shine on the good guys, and you come up one side of the mountain on the other, and then you have that big battle with the big boss man when Ray Traylor comes out of the ring, and making you serve hard time just as he always wanted to. So I want it to be slick and fast and move. I don't want rules to be looked up. I don't want things to clog up. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you love to look up rules in a book instead of play and have a fast, dynamic paced action. And here's the key. The real key is to have a system that gets the fuck out of your way. That's all you want from a system, to get the fuck out of your way. That means it needs to be easy, simple, easy to teach, easy to remember. And one roll mechanics are the joint. There is no reason to have two roll mechanics in a game. One roll mechanic is all you need. The system itself is only as important as it allows you to facilitate the game you want to play. So what I want is cinematics. I want the game to move fast and slick and to not have the system bog it down and choke out all this time. I want to move through and just sort this dude out and that, and then bam, get hit hard, and then I'm back, I'm reeling, I'm selling. The blood is pouring down, the teeth are knocked from the mouth, and then I come back and we got a story. Oh, I got the teeth missing. I've been jacked in the face. We could tell that story about how the arm got broken. In his game. And it comes down to this. It comes down to role-playing components. The system should stimulate role-playing mechanics. Combat, for example, should be ripe with role-playing. And for a long time in games, when I played bad D&D games, bad Rift games, bad Shadowrun games, bad Cyberpunk games, bad World of Darkness games, or at least ones that weren't that great, I would see combat as a chore, a draining, exhausting thing. I rolled some damage, and I don't know, you hit me. And that's what people were doing, right? And this is a long time ago. Talking about stage where I was like 15, I couldn't stand it. I said, well, how do we make that better? How do we make it better? And it was a long learning process to engage the details, drinking the smell, drinking the sound, the wind moving, the sound of someone behind you, another combat occurring, tripping over that fallen body. Yeah, those bodies seem to magically disappear, don't they? What about the shit, the piss, the smell, that horror thing, that stank breath of the Minotaur in your mouth? Engage all these things, bring it in, drink it in. That's the nectar. That's what you want to see when you turn into a show, isn't it? You don't want to see somebody dealing 7 points of damage. You want to see that engaged, immersive. And in this system, it does that perfectly by throwing the ball back to the player. What happens? You make your roll. And this is another thing that people do that drives me fucking berserk. Do not describe, roll. Roll, describe. It might sound like that's the same thing. It is absolutely not. People will try to mechanically prostitute a game by giving you this lavish, wonderful description. I guarantee you I could do that to you every single time, but you don't want to do that because what's the point of the dice? You're telling me, well, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to come in with this and that. That's not how fights fucking work. If you've never been in a fight, maybe you think that, but this is how fights really work. Trust me, I know a little bit about this. You grab what you can grab. And if you actually know how to fight, you'll build up something called muscle memory. And muscle memory allows you to execute without thought. You're simply in the position and you go for it. You grab that. You hit that takedown. You throw that fucking body shot. What have you. You go for what's open. You're not sitting there carefully, constantly thinking, oh, I'm going to go do this now. Dude, you're going to get your ass knocked out if you're, if that's where you are. Your body needs to be the one reacting, moving. And that's exactly why you roll first. You roll tremendously. Boom. Now you've got that Mike Tyson uppercut in there. Wow, that's great. Just bam, and describe it. And I'll give you the, just the go home sign. And once people know, I don't even tell them anything. I shoot them whatever sign that they know is established. Just take it home. You have defeated that guy, and you can Batman him out and knock him out, or you can press slam him over the fucking wall, or you could fucking behead him or gut him, or just watch any video that I've been doing in combat. Because I've done goddamn everything. And I like to make mine hyper violent, because Within the Ring of Fire is a hyper violent game. You can run pretty violent games, like Three Musketeers style, where maybe there's a little dot of blood. No. That's not combat how I see it. That's not ogre style combat. You think Scott Steiner is not going to destroy you when that man hits you with the freaks and the peaks? That man cares. That man will Steiner screwdriver you and kill you in the middle of Nitro. He doesn't give a damn. And that's the big bad booty daddy. So, I like to see that, just engaging it, to the horror. And I'm going to put your character through horror, and then let you put the other characters, or my embers through horror, as that violence, that dance of violence occurs. But then again, I throw it to you. Okay, you killed him. What happens? Describe in the best detail you can. And that's largely what your experience comes off to, your collaborative achievement. And it takes so much pressure off a game master. There's so much energy you don't have to expand. While he's doing that, that's when you can prep up something else. And that just a few seconds of prep time. And a lot of players give you a lot more than that, and they are so happy to do it. So instead of putting the impetus of that work upon yourself, you're giving it to them, but it's not work for them. That's wondrous. They're describing how badass their character is in full fucking dramatic flair, and they love it. And then they start trying to out fucking do each other. Watch, it'll happen. And I'm calling your ass out, the dirts to the dirts and the onioniness. I'll describe that ass, and I'll be the first one to make me a throw up. 5. Which is one of our in-game jokes. But how you gonna fuck a bear? So that being said, you want to give the player, I do, give the player the chance to sell. Something bad has happened to them, so you throw it to them when they failed, or when the embers just crushed them and their health gauge is just down. Okay, what happens? Did you break your sternum? Did you break ribs? Did he break your back and fuck your ass and make you humble, Iron Sheik style? What happened here? You describe that, and now you have to sell. And at first, a lot of players will draw back and they give you this wimpy sell, and you kind of look at them like, oh, that's all you can do. And then you kind of stumble a little bit, and then next time I'm like, well, wait a minute, they give you a little bit more, and because they see that experience didn't get high on that, they're like, no. And then you tell them why, and they can't say anything. They're like, okay. And then next time a little more and a little more, and then they're selling their ass off. And guess what? Start selling their ass off. They find they fucking love it. I'm not telling you what happens to your character. You are, and you get more experience for getting violent and vivid, and being willing to sacrifice of your character for the scene. It doesn't mean kill your character. But maybe something really bad happens to you there, and then you're selling that through the rest of the scene, or for the rest of that particular story. And I think that trusting the players, giving them that collaborative narrative, allows them to vividly engage the scene, talking about what happens to them, talking about what they do, and they love it. And it takes away so many mechanical concerns of this and that, because it allows for that dynamic Arnold Schwarzenegger pace. It allows for that action story. It allows for that Game of Thrones style. It allows for any sort of combat sequence you want, from that bland, generic ass Kevin Sorbo to that luxurious Arnold Schwarzenegger, to that Three Musketeers style, to the Game of Thrones, to the fucking Walking Dead, whatever you want. It accommodates everything, and is wonderful for. And we've been playtesting things, and there's other things out there. I will guarantee you that for that superhero type of game, because uh, you describe it, you're telling the people know what's going on, and then you engage it, and then you imagine that collective ethereal space that we share for the game. Boom! All of a sudden, you have the movie right here. You don't have 7 points of damage. You have the movie, and the mechanics are streamlined in a way with extras, with stars, with soliloquies, and with selling, and that's quite in the book. That's experience point awarded. That's part of it. The selling, the registering, the dealing out. You're taking the glory as well, and you're allowed to describe all that. And it takes so much of a tax off a game master, because it gives you that time, those few seconds here, and then a few seconds here, and a few seconds here, and you're able to come up with that next thing you need, because you're already thinking. And this guy might be over here describing, and you've already rolled out your next sequence. Bam! So you have that sequence teed up because it's already been rolled off. He's describing, you're paying attention, you've rolled out your sequence, and then boom, sequence number 2. So you go from one to the next one without having to stop, pause, and awkwardly roll out a sequence. And once you get the hang of the system, which is very quick, very simple, very easy, one roll system, you will be able to really draw the kind of game that you've always wanted to. And I think that this is, I've played in over 100 games as a player, and I've run the Ring of Fire system. The air system is what powers it. That's accelerated immersive role playing. Remember, air. It's what role playing needs to survive. I have to credit Alex Skeletto on that one. But I think that's basically the answer to your question there. So please on to the next. Oh, but before we go on to the next one, I as you all noticed, I ran. I'm sorry, it's a little bit shaky. I have this in my lap. I ran the other room to show you two of my earliest inspirations. Now, these are not those same books. But they had these down in the library, and I found one of these in a thrift store, which is, in fact, it might even have a video. You shoot some thrift store finds videos on a channel with my son, and I found this for $1.99. Look at that! I found that for $1.99. I'm not going to butcher the name. My nephew and I probably always get it wrong. I've been saying it for years, but these. I mean, look at that. I mean, the original dust jacket. It's fucking. It was in much better shape when I got a hold of it, but that one, and then this, of course. I just went and I bought this online. I couldn't remember that name, so I couldn't ever find these. I looked for them for years online, and then boom, just went to the thrift store and found one. It was just like this, like that much of it. In fact, I think it was like that much was. It was in the back, and other books were in front of it, and I was like, and they definitely could have gotten a lot more than the $1.99. Now they're reprinting these in Barnes and Nobles. That's the one that's still open. Barnes and Nobles. They have like softback reprints of these. I would strongly recommend buying these. These were definitely in my formative years strong in my mythological mind. The stories, just fucking wonderful stories. I mean, if you got a kid, man, you got to buy this and read it to your kids. You'll make them gamers. In fact, I probably have do a review of these to my son. Let me know in the comments below if you want to hear me and my son do reviews of these books at some point. I think that would be maybe charming. I'm sorry, but back to you.
All right, so we've talked about, or you've talked about, the species, their relations. We talked about the world within the Ring of Fire and perhaps even outside. We talked about the divine, how you formulated that. We talked about how the game is actually played through soliloquies and cinematic, sort of fast-paced play. But this leads to another question. What future books do you see coming down this line within Ring of Fire and perhaps others using the air system?
Well, I have one book that is a top secret um, that's going to be coming out. Uh, well, I will have an air system book that's going to be coming out. This is going to be generic, the air system, updated, cleaned up, refined, streamlined even more than it is substantially. And it is a very streamlined system. So we've already started a little bit in the way of play test for the streamlining of the system. And I think that's going to really come across very interestingly. The system originally, you might note, it has a small similarity to like a D20 game, and that's because initially within the Ring of Fire was going to be a D20 release, and then I broke down the system in a way I'd never broke it down before. They went, oh, 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 because there's a lot of things I just hand wave aside, but when you're making a system, you need to endorse it and play exactly how you're making that, because that's what you're telling. That's essentially how you're telling other people to play. It's like, here's the system, here's how you do it, and then people play like that. And there were things that I become ravenously angry about because I saw that they had deceived me. So if those see my irritation, particularly say circa 3 years ago, with certain things like 5 foot squares, well, I mean, there's why. I saw how strongly of an enemy these things provided to actual immersive role play, and that's all I'm about. That is all I'm about. I have no desire to gameplay. Um, I see that really is no different than picking up a board game, and I'm not really a big board game fan. I'll play Arkham Horror because it's awesome, and I have like one of the Magic the Gathering board games, and I'll play Risk, and I'll whoop your ass at it too. And if I get Australia, you might as well concede right then. Just throw out your shit. Um, I've never lost a game of Risk that I played with people that didn't know me because they didn't they didn't have that huge advantage. No, kill him! Don't let him talk you out of it. Kill him! Oh man, here's why you just come. Look how fair. They'd be like looking, and as soon as they look, that's a wrap. I can be down to one man in one country. I'm gonna win that motherfucking game. Um, so I'm strongly, strongly there is probably no one that's more of an outspoken advocate of immersive style of role playing than I am. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are yourself, Lou, Matt Pritchard, Alex Gillette, a lot of people that come from it harder or softer in certain ways. But I piss a lot of people off saying it because I strongly and firmly believe in it. I don't say it to piss people off. I say it because I firmly believe that is the way to attract the largest number of people to the hobby. And that's strongly what I sat down and spent enormous amounts of time in my life, and made lots of different sacrifices in my life to produce this game for people. Not to make $1 million, just to make maybe 1 million good memories for people, 1 million wonderful scenes in games and the exploration of a world that I think is just so fucking fun to play in. Just as a player myself, I always get hyped for a Mihangi or for a Kalfar or for an ogre or you know what I'm saying, baby. Um, so for me, I'm real big on that, and I like to. I just blanked on the question. What was the question again?
Do you have any further books coming down the line from within Ring of Fire, or perhaps another completely different thing that isn't within the Ring of Fire?
Right. Well, I'm not going to give you the name of the other one. I will tell you this on the game I have up. The guy that wrote World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade, offered to buy it from me and hire me to develop it for him. I said, no. But he thought it was absolutely fantastic. I will tell you this much. It's what. Well, let me just tell you this. There's a game White Wolf put out called Demon the Fallen. And when I read it, I went, oh, when I saw it came out, I was so happy. And when I read it, I don't know how I didn't throw the book across the room, as it disappointed me so catastrophically. But don't worry, you're going to like this one. It's going to be, it's going to be ostensibly real world, type of game. Very different, and somehow way darker than the Ring of Fire. It's gonna be very, very good. You guys, I think, are really gonna like it. Of course, we have a generic air system book coming out, and several other within the Ring of Fire books. Here Be Dragons. Hopefully, will be the next release, with art by someone else who is in the chat with me. So we are playtesting Here Be Dragons right now. The As it stands right now, just the dragon section alone is what is it, like 25,000, 30,000 words, something like that. That's
So
just for that
much.
chapter.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more written. The book is not finished, but there's a lot written in it. It's about the dragons of Within the Ring of Fire. That's right, coming to a catalyst near you, directly in front of you, perhaps. That's right, all about playing dragons, the legendary level. And this game is built in a way that you can play. You can play werewolves and vampires and ghouls and fucking unicorns and anything that's sapient at different tiers. You have your basic tier, your advanced tier, you have your master tier, and then you have your legendary. Um, so at legendary, there's only one thing, and those are called dragons. And soon here they be. So that's something definitely for you to look forward to. There's going to be another base species in there. There's a 7 real dragons. There's all sorts of going to be different draconic creatures like the cockatrice that can be used for all sorts of different purposes, um, including mounts. So that's definitely something that you guys are going to like. And after that, also working on currently Menagerie, which comes on answers tons of questions. And I'm sure some of Lou's questions later on will be like, you have to buy Menagerie for those answers. Um, you want people. This kind of struck me oddly. There's some cross species, right? Bastards, and I just never planned to stat them out or make them. I figured people just whatever. And I had just an incredible desire. People like, we want stats, we want official. I was like, all right, if you want that. So they're written. They're all of them are written. All of the bloodlines and the bastards are written up. They'll be in there. There will be some stuff about the other worlds. There will be um, a few very very small populated new base species. There will be more animals, mounts, some different monsters. There's going to be just a ton of stuff. Um, and there's going to be something I'm not going to tell you yet. It's going to knock you on your ass. It's going to be something that you can play at basic level that you're going to fucking, it's the thing you've always fucking wanted to play if you're a fantasy gamer. And you're going to be fucking astounded. And and I'm already playtesting it. And you can watch that on Mia's channel where you can see what exactly I was playtesting. And Lou may have some guesses, but he doesn't know, at least not from me. So these things are really, it's those possibilities, that mythical world. These things. This is what I want to let you dive into. Those old stories, man. And that's what we have right on the cover of the first book. It's an ogre. He's telling a story, and he's with all these paintings on the back of this cave, this ancient place. This ogre is telling a story, and what you can't see in the forefront. This is if the picture was expanded, and it's not supposed to be, but if the picture was expanded, what you see is a whole bunch of children on the other side of the campfire, and the ogres. This ogre is telling them stories. Because that's what it's about. It's about telling a story. And as we talk about in chapter 1, make believe. A dad playing monster with his kids, 2 kids playing cops and robbers. You know, that's what it is, man. And it doesn't need to be barely anymore. It needs to be more. Maybe it'll never even be as beautiful, but if you can capture that beauty and you can add the elegance of an adult mind, of a creative mind, then wow, you got it, man. Because what was fucking more fun than running outside and playing the stuff you saw on TV? That was it, man. But you upgrade it. You add in a little system, a little very light, and you add in, so you have that probability, a chance for success or failure, which spikes it up, right? You're gambling. You're engaging that bit of the mind. You're engaging this far more uh, elaborate fantasy. And you already have it because everybody can fucking role play, man. And it's just such a beautiful thing, and it's something I love to share with people. I love to bring more people into the hobby. I love when I have that conversation, and they don't have that kind of look, like, I don't know, it must sound as pejorative as it's going to, but they look at someone like, oh, it's D&D, we're playing D&D, and they're like, ugh. When you can take that same person and instead they're like, uh, um, and where does that go? They want to play. And when I pop that, when you have people you wouldn't necessarily assume, people who are real hard motherfuckers, I mean, real hard, um, or fucking these beautiful women who have never seen it. I'm going to have those sort of people, different types of people you wouldn't assume and had never played or never anything like that, and then you catch him up, dude. That's what it's about for me. And also another possible, a big what if within the Ring of Fire book that just might, depending on how well you guys support the line, just might come out. It's called Perfect World, and it just answers a certain question: what if Aramon wins? And another one who I'm not going to give you the name of because the name is fucking fantastic. If you read about Aramon, and you should, because Aramon is very important in the meta, and there's a world before this one, and a world before that, and a world before that, and they're all in here. And there's a lot of that world. This is the fourth world. There's a lot of the third world written, and that book might be coming out too for Within the Ring of Fire. Well, won't really be Within the Ring of Fire, will it? But I don't want to say the name because the name is so fucking good. Someone will steal it. It's probably the name I'm happiest. Well, probably I don't know. There's a name for another game system that I'm coming out with that I alluded to earlier. The one that there was much financial interest in. So those aside, that is on the forecast. That's what 4, 5, like 6 books, and then the other one I told you about. There's a supplement for it that has something to do with another mythological figure. It's gonna fucking blow you guys away. I don't even want to tip it off because it's gonna be it's 2 books, and one of them it's gonna be a 2-book game. I think it's just gonna be 2 books in it because I think I can get everything and an introductory module into one, and I might put some sort of like very small sort of starting point module in Menagerie because I had a few people make very intelligent arguments for that being done in a certain Kvegathalian way. But yeah, take it away, Lou.
Now is the part where we begin the dance. The dance to hold back any sort of spoilers or things that you do not wish to answer. These following questions will be questions very specific to Within the Ring of Fire. Now, let's start off with the realms of the gods. The Court of Order, the Court of Freedom, Dreams. They are they located within the spiritual reflection of Kvegathel, or are they completely outside the world or outside the Ring of Fire itself?
All right. You froze completely on me?
I froze
the whole
completely.
Question. Yeah.
All right. Where
no
are
idea
the
if you did or not,
gods?
but I did.
Where
What's
are
that?
the gods in their courts? Are they in the spiritual reflection, or are they outside the outside the Within the Ring of Fire? Or they in some other areas, such as like the Island of Freedom, the Island of Order? Are they? Where are these places exactly?
Well, the Island of Freedom and Order reside just past the flames of Morgul. Now, gods do spend time there, but elder creators are very visible. You constantly see them. The gods, however, exist in many different places. Some of them exist within the world in different places. Some of them are buried inside of it, sleeping. Others are residing in the very pit of hell upon masses of souls and gold with plans of resurrecting the sun in their own image. There are others that are high off into the world. There are gods that have simply taken the visage of a Freyne or a Kitsune and just walked the world just to see, to understand, to study, to be part of it. There are gods that spend much of their time in kingdoms they have woven for themselves inside of the dream world, where there are nightmares or erotic lust or daydreams and vague fond memories. There are gods that exist there upon the floating clouds, and their cities with their citizens, or very, very deep at the bottom of Leviathan in old ancient trenches that I would think you may not want to venture into. But Shai found that out. There are many special spiritual places and reflection of the world in the land behind the mirror, and in the ghost worlds where different gods and goddesses spend much of their time, or trolls, or angels, or all such things. So it really breaks down to the point of what do you need the god to be doing, and where are they at the time? The gods are mobile. They don't simply sit in a place and stare. They move about. They have their own interest and ideas. And it is important to understand that the gods are not all knowing, nor are they all seeing. So they investigate the world, but they're very careful as to how they show themselves off for a large number of reasons. But don't misunderstand, they do at times show themselves off. They are not these impossible esoteric things that people simply hope to believe they are there. They are those who have seen them. They are those who have seen their wake or their wrath or their omens in such strong amounts that they know with utter certainty. So the real answer is I encourage people to use the divinities. These are characters that have been built and made for your usage. I use them readily when I run a game. So use them. Be careful with them. One of the best ways to run a divinity is to show what they don't know, and then make sure it's established that the other things they know real well. Unless it's Raxel, and he's like, so the world is a moving stage that other things happen. The scenery isn't just sitting there; it's moving, it's changing, it's becoming other things behind you as you are engaging it, and there are other characters moving along that stage. And the gods definitely can become involved, certainly in the character story, much like the gods in books like these. They look and they wait and they watch and they act and they favor. And your characters are stars, and they can earn the enmity or the favor, the love, the hatred of these gods, of these other divine creatures as well. So it comes down to the sort of epic saga that you're weaving, and the gods can most certainly be anywhere that you want them to. They do interact with the world, and they do hide from the world.
Now, you've kind of hinted a bit now with your answer about the, the divine, but perhaps if you could give a little bit more detailed explanation on this spiritual reflection of Gregathiel. It had been noted on one of the books, but what this spiritual reflection, this area, this dimension, is relative to what is called the fleshlands, Gregathiel, where normally the game is ran.
Well, there are many different spiritual worlds throughout different mythologies, and there are, of course, string theory and then other. I don't want to get too much into physics now, but the postulations of other worlds existing. So what I wanted to do was take another world, like a bladder, and sort of run it along and up and over, right? But then it expands, and the further you get away from our world, the more it becomes different. But it's not. The world is similar, is the reason it's called a spiritual reflection. It's not to say the same world. Now there may be overlapping things of tremendous spiritual power that appear on both sides, but predominantly there are spirits there. This is where the daemons live. This is predominantly the realm of daemons. There's also many angels that exist here. There are daemons, of course, also that exist within the ghost worlds, those primarily of the children of Tuhul. Now, the spiritual reflection there, it has other things. There are perfect forms, uh, such as the uh, plants many of the giants harvest. And this is where many of the giants exist when they're not sleeping within the earth. They exist within this dimension. They are spirits, and they go about the business of spirits. And it's not that there are people here. The peoples here are spirits, and spirits interact in their own world with their own hierarchy, with their own strengths, with their own names, speaking to each other, having their own politics and theocracies and their own um, communities. So that's essentially where your giants are, where your uh, spirits of so many different types come and go and move through to deal with each other. So you have not only such a place in the not only such a place around the world, but also because the world is a bonding of certain elder creators, and then the sun is itself another. So there's a likewise reflection there, and then this is certainly where a lot of your angels and such are going to be residing, often even dormant, but carrying that light energy. And many spirits live for a very long time, and they do go in and out of consciousness and such. So there you have it. It's definitely not the same as if you were to step into there. And I think because I've had a lot of interest in those questions, I think we're going to have some more upcoming information in Menagerie. I think, don't hold me to everything, but I think some of these spiritual worlds might be fleshed out just a little bit more for those that are interested in that upcoming product.
Now, as a little bit of a follow-up from this question, you had noted a little bit in your answer that giants farm spiritual plants, and you've also noted on that there's a similarity between some sort of things that would be in the spirit world or spiritual world and things that would be in Kvegathel, like a potato. In Kvegathel, is there a spirit potato that the giant farms in his spirit world, in his reflection?
Well, there are all sorts of wonderful, special, strange things, even things that Aramon attempted to annihilate that have been pulled and plucked back into the spiritual world. So you could certainly have all manner of things that you want to introduce with this tremendous aura of specialness about them. This potato is so potent that when you eat from it, you will live uh, twice the lifespan of a normal man. Like, oh, no, do not touch it with your unworthy hands, for you will be seared for your blasphemy. So it's another way to add a depth of legacy, of lore, of interest, of spectacularness to whatever you want to introduce. The tremendous taste of it, or the fact that perhaps you're unable to touch it without certain means. Whether it can or cannot be manifest to a material form or a pseudo material form. You can certainly have all sorts of things that taste like, almost like, imagine, things like Jello that are almost on that fucking edge of ephemery. It's like, okay, I can tell, but the substance is wrong in a way. The jelloiness, the lack of substance, and you can certainly bring things like that over from your more perfect pure dimension. The spiritual reflection is far closer to pure. Remember, flesh, matter itself is the abomination, the thing that is unclean. And it's not only Aramon that knows this; it's everything with the spirit. It is why spirits are pushed back so far and so dislike of the flesh creatures. And we see certain things that are even synthesis, more perfectly pure synthesis of flesh and spirit than the base things of the world, such things such as dragons.
Now, talking a little bit about the divine, how does he who has many names in Zost remain on such good terms, since he who has many names, this angel, is a rampant soul thief?
Well, that's a question that I think the book definitely hints at. At the very least, you can see under he has many names entry that there's definitely tension between he and Zoust. Zoust, more of a goodly sort of divinity. Certainly, the only one I think of the enforcers that people would probably really look at as good is in a bad spot, right? These angels, the angels are a problem, but guess what else is in there? Guess who else wants these things? And then Zos can't have this. Can't have those necromantic, grave-robbing, filthy, despicable orcs to have their way and to bring back trolls upon the place. Zoust, a fierce soldier and warrior from day one, and will be a warrior till the day's done. Brought into this really rigid, Zoust is a rigid creature protector of graves and sanctity, and enough lip service is paid. Remember, you speak of the honey-eyed one. You speak of the weaver of tales upon the tongue. Perhaps the only one more clever in the mouth and more golden-tongued, perhaps, would be Loptif herself. And besides that, there is not much in the way that he who has many names cannot twist. Remember, that is 66 minds inside one head. That is an individual of tremendous potency. And Zoust is in a bad slot. The question would be flipped back: who else might Zoust team up with to have a position where goals might actually be met? And remember, necromancers are necromancers, and Zoust doesn't give a fuck if you're profane or sacred. Your ass needs to go somewhere. Zoust doesn't have a place to put you, so that becomes a problem. Zoust, however, has a place to put you when there's an alliance with you as many names. So something else that's very strong in the game is hypocrisy, because her religions are full of hypocrisy. Now, there are exceptions to this, but there's so much of it carefully woven, and there's compromises. The deity doesn't want you to compromise, but you have to constantly, because every time you do almost anything, you're saying prayers. Basically, you're supporting the dominions of other divinities. And I believe Aadun said it best: every lie from your lips is a prayer to Loptiv. And that goes for everything. Lose your temper? Oops. Attack someone. Be generous to someone. Be kind. Be loving. Be sexual. All of these things, fall in love, are prayers to different divinities. So you can, it's so difficult to achieve that transcendent perfectness of a saint, because you are placating so many different masters, almost completely unaware of what you're actually doing. So it really creates a real system of interest. And again, Kavigethel is not a goodly place. There are no Harpers here, buddy. Not even Brian Harper. So definitely not him. So you're in a spot where who do you put in your stable? Because there's a lot of them on the other side. There's this many. There's this many that want that Zothian ass. And they be lurking from the mirrors, and they be seeing, and they be doing things. So you have to make concessions at times, and that's essentially the best of a bad place, of a bad place to be.
All right. Now, can you go into how gods create species, or the divine, how they create species? How, in an example, how can Shy, the queen of cats herself, create so many Cheyenne species when others struggle, like Pelgan, with some failures, like the extinct Hi-Hi?
What if I told you there were individuals that wanted to become divine, that wanted to gain that potency of thrones? And what if I told you there would be mechanics in a certain book called Menagerie that's actually going to explain how you do those things, how you slowly rise up with the lower levels of what a deity needs, how you begin to attempt to pry away potency, dominion, acquiring things. The easiest potency to pull away is the vague, generic potency. If you can find something specific, isolated, and this occurs a lot in the books, there'll be, like a divinity that has potency over fish, and then there'll be a divinity that has potency over a certain fish, just as an example. That is prying away some potency from another thing, or creating your own thing. Now, divinities, I think it's just fucking gauche to write out character sheets on an actual divinity. They're so powerful, they're ridiculous. Divinities are good at certain things. They have their own potency, their own stats, their own powers. Think of them, I don't know, think of them more like as mega like superheroes, Well, they have different things they can do. Some of them are not capable of creating sapient species, or others see it as a bad move for a number of reasons. And then still others uh, are waiting for the right time. So there may be more things coming from other divinities that previously there had not been. So that in itself is very interesting. But Shy is the fucking best at that. Absolutely. And that's very, very strongly supposed to come off. It's like, oh yeah? How about this? Bat, 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 bat. And then you have a whole bunch of different species there. And that was a very strong conscious thought, because again, I'm looking at demographics, I'm looking at the types of places that we have people coming in from in the new gamers, right? These people uh, and I saw a lot of things that I wanted to include in the game, and definitely some anthropomorphic cat people, if you can see where I'm going with this, I thought would be a very, very poor idea not to include. I thought that was in itself a strong draw. Here they are. There's no reason you can't play them. Here's how they fit in the world. Here's who likes them. Here's who doesn't. Here's where they live. Here's where you could probably get away with having them. And they're just, again, normal denizens of the world. Again, remember, Canteen, Star Wars, just fucking everybody's going to show up, and they're going to be still playing. Dun, 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 dun. You know what I'm saying? They're not phased by that bullshit. They're going to play that same song again, and that's very, very important to kind of get the image that I'm going for. It's dark, it's gritty, it's scummy. You're looking around like, ooh. All right, well, I guess I got to deal with the fact of what these guys do, because fuck, they're going to do them, and I need to do me. And when you have a lot of shades of gray and not that many really bright specks of gold and white, some bad things do happen. But I wanted to very strongly establish that some of them are very cagey and cunning on how they do that. Some of them play the aunt or uncle role to other species. Some of them have so much on their plates, like bringing in spirits for a properness, or trying to harvest them, or this or that or the other thing, that they didn't create them. And some of them are just too goddamn selfish to invest a portion of themselves or their power that way. But they certainly wouldn't mind stealing someone else. You can look at someone like El Sam. Yes, I am not going to do that. I am not going to have kids, but I will steal yours from you and raise them as my own.
That's a good answer.
Thank you.
And it's funny that you bring up Elsam, as that is what this next question perhaps pertains to. That it seems that all the gods and all the divine are direct descendants or descendants from these elder creators. Elsam's child with Ahriman, Malak, shows that the gods are fertile. Are there any second generation gods that don't have the thrones, that don't sit upon one of the 77 thrones, like offspring from Pelgan and Shai or Helena? Or can gods only breed with elder creators?
Well, I would point you first of all to the saga book, to the 5-Point Evangelist, Scion of Herflin. You may have heard of it. My character in your game currently has that one. So we see that divinities can breed quite a bit, and you're going to see quite a bit more of that. Menagerie, look for it. So it's very important to note that divinities can breed with other things, with each other. There are also a whole slew, and I have received almost no questions about this, so maybe people didn't really notice that. God and divine do not mean the same thing. God is a type of spirit. It means you are the child of two, not one, but two elder creators. And there's a whole bunch out there. There's a whole bunch of trolls fucking killed. They're like, ew, and they killed them. Or they are same gods, as we do remember what Nagas is most famous for. And there might be a few rocks or trees or all sorts of things that have gods bound in them. Yes, imagine that sort of magical item. They do exist. They're necromancers, they're summoners, there's all sorts of things. And they did some real powerful stuff in the Gods War. Just because the trolls lost doesn't mean there weren't really bad casualties on the other side that had a whole lot. There were a lot more gods than there are trolls. And the trolls basically lost a war of attrition. And that being said, there are some gods that paid a very bad price. So the uh, Malak was he's actually, mechanically speaking, like I said, when I made it, I took everything I had from games, right? That was cool, that worked, everything that worked, and I knew I had him with it. Well, I'll give it to you guys. Here you go. Here's the fucking all the fucking best hits of an entire gaming career, of a gaming lifetime. And Malak is going all. I made him in detention one day in high school. No, in school suspension. That's what it was. Yeah, sometimes I get in trouble. But I'm in there in school suspension, right? And I'm working on stuff for my Ravenloft game. And Malak. And Malak was a demon. So I retooled him, updated him, created him, wedged him in with the mythology, with everything else. Began to develop the tendrils. And I wanted, this is very important, also note, I didn't want to write everything, detail everything out, because that's my natural nature, is to detail everything. Here you go. Here's 9,000 phone books worth of information. Go ahead and read that. Not really an attractive selling point. I really got that idea strongly from my man, the Hobbitist Tim Harper, a piece of trash that he is. No, I love Tim. Tim is wonderful. But actually, some people thought we had like real heat. I joke all the time, constantly. So just remember that. And he said, I really like to have stuff I can develop in games. So I left a lot of largely blank canvas in the world very strongly for that reason. Also, it helps to include a lot more in other areas. And then leave, okay, they're not going to go in too much in an area, so you guys can do what you want there. A lot of game masters feel so much more comfortable tending to flames in an area that's not well established versus an area that's incredibly well established, because they're like, oh, I gotta remember this. And I got this ember here. I gotta incorporate him. He's fucking important. And then they're like, oh shit, God, no, I made up an ember and there's one right here that does that. Oh God, I fucked up. It's so much easier not to fuck up when there's almost nothing to fuck up, or very little. And you can read it and you go, okay, I got this, this, and this. These 3 things I need to work in. These 7 things I need to work in. Whatever, no problem. I got it. I'm good to go. So I try to keep that in mind. But there's an enormous amount of other gods out there, and many of them want thrones of divinity. Many of the giant kings, many of the Oni kings, they want that throne of divinity. What about children of the gods? Both those of mortal descent and those of immortal descent. So, I mean, you can just tell wonderful stories. Why wouldn't you bring a child of Pelgan and Alina into a game if you wanted it there? Maybe it's mad as fuck at its parents. Maybe it wants to destroy them. Maybe it's fallen over to darkness, as Sweet whispers. Maybe it has its own agendas. Maybe it has a plan to get somewhere. Maybe it just wants the respect of its parents. You could tell a wonderful, wonderful story around any concept like that. And there are thousands of small cults around that have nothing to do with any of the gods. There are cults of various sorts of perpetrators. The gods do not necessarily notice these things until they do. And there's one thing that they can generally all agree on, those that hold the thrones. They don't want you taking any power away from them. And then you have problems. But that's as a cult kind of arcs upwards. So Malak may run into some real serious problems at some point, or maybe he won't. There have been those who have been wise and careful enough to themselves acquire thrones of divinity. Even if we look for an example of the gods coming later, I mean, we can look at like Nick-Nock Thage, the god that came after, is a really good example of that. But there are a numerous number of gods that are powerful, like level 5, most of them level 5, some level 4 spirits that are very, very powerful, and you can work in your game. They have their cults, many of them do at least. They have their names, their ideas, their dogmas and stigmas, their ways to interact, their plans and plots to get a throne, and their lies. Lots of them lie to people. That's how they get help. They might even tell them they're another god or another divinity, or tell them they're some dead divinity, come back, or maybe a dead divinity can come back. So all those things should be fertile story ground. One of the biggest things I did when I wrote the book, I wanted to go plot it, plot it, plot it, plot it, plot it. And if you look at the books and read them, it's just enormous numbers of plot hooks to inspire your mind, to get you thinking, to have a great story, because that's what it is, and the politics of the bedroom, of children and mating rights and opportunity towards mates. That is so important to bring into a game, and uh, we can do that on the divine stage. So they definitely so much material. So create embers for your game, and do not be scared to create very powerful ones or to use the powerful one. They're in the book. You bought it. It's your book now. Do whatever you want with it. Just try to make the best game you can, entertain your players. That's all I ask, man. Try to make the people you're playing with have fun. There you go.
All right. Now, I should note that many of these questions that I'm asking now are from the community themselves that wish to ask the barbarian chieftain himself uh, his answers upon these, uh, such as why does opiate have dominion over empathy?
Well, if you will actually take a closer read there, my friend Lewis, you will notice that empathy was actually of the dominion of Ishimi. Now, Ishimi fell, and like owls, opiate took over the dominion of empathy directly from Ishimi, a dead divinity. And once a divinity dies, their powers are free to be claimed. There are, however, a few lingering powers of different dead divinities still kicking around.
Hmm. Now, again with opiate, there's been questions as to what bacteria is in Kvegathale and how they related to opiate.
What if I were to tell you that dreams die, and sometimes you can see those dreams?
What's up with Dishronin, uh, another dead divinity, having dominion over disease when she has no relation to demons or the darkness, or is there a relation? I guess when she was alive.
Well, uh, she only had a slight relation to them because she was able to get a hold of that when the numbering of dominions came around. She was able to get a hold of that. That made someone mad, and then someone did horrible things to her. So that's what happens when you fuck with someone else's shit in uh, Covega Thale. And that someone was Azadehaka, and Azadehaka, well, get 77 throws, the Theological Codex on sale now at drivethroughrpg.com. Heard your main man up on Facebook, and you get the PDF direct to your bitch ass. So that is something that you definitely want to get a hold of.
Now, again with another dead divinity, as you have listed in the book 77 Thrones. A lot of alive divinities and those divinities that have died or were killed or murdered, such as Nif, the elder creator of cold. What was its worship like, and what were some of its dogmas or sins be?
Well, I'm not really prepared to go into that fully because there's going to be, well, you'll see a future products why uh, there's something there I don't quite want to go into, and I believe I will if I start answering that question. But NIF is uh, an entity that somewhat like Morgul has, or at least had, or perhaps still has, who can know, very specific ideas and doctrines on exactly how it wanted to dominate, control the world, and embrace everything in its cold and annihilate that flame that caused such problems for it. There was perhaps others that would have been quite pleased with Nif's ideas, and others that would have perhaps been, well, very strongly opposed to them. But as we do notice, there is still cold in the world. There's a big place, there's a lot of cold, and that's where Nif's body is. So,
Now, I believe you kind of touched on this about the hypocrisy between some relations that gods have to their followers. This question pertains to the Harvest Master himself, Valex, who detests magic. He hates trolls, and he hates magic. Yet, in a certain part of the world, in Fapum, the human, I guess, king of the lands allows magic to be worshipped, allows magic to be practiced, even though the avatar of Alex is there.
Well, absolutely. When you get into the orc lands, you need to make compromises. Again, we're not dealing in a world of black and white. This is a world of shades of gray, and not getting killed is generally viewed as a good thing. Uh, one of the easy ways to get killed in the game is to roll a little too strong on the orcs. So there are often forced situations of tolerance. And even when you say disdain a practice of magic, not to say that any individual here in this case does, but when you disdain a practice of magic, that there is a unnecessary tolerance for the power of such things if you yourself are unable to change the situation, or very unlikely to be able to change it, more likely to simply get yourself killed. This is definitely the wrong part of the world to be in if you're going to cause problems of that variety. Now, religions, very interestingly enough, change, and that's something I really try to push over. There's a lot of entries there that kind of detail cults that emerge and how those cults um, affect the change of the divinity, and perhaps even the change of an avatar. How they're pulled in all kinds of different ways, and there's lots more of them than I kind of thought you guys might want to read about. I could have detailed 1,000 cults in the book that are very much heretical from the point of heterodoxy of the established religion. Divinity has generally two choices: smash them, or look at them and go, "Ooh, they brought a lot of people in." And they start getting pulled in that direction. So there's sort of this constant ebb and flow and back and forth on how hardline most of the divinities are towards certain things. They can relax for times, and they can become very, very intolerant. Old grudges can be remembered or forgotten, at least for a time.
Hmm. Now, another dead divinity, Asner, is the name of the one of the absolute dragons created by the elder creator of light, of the horror master. Yet, in the entry of the Marutuk, the dragon that created them is referred to as Anar. Are they one and the same, or are they two different entities?
Yeah, it's one and the same. I'd initially gone with the concept of having a multitude of names, which you see often in mythology, from city state to city state. There might be variants in certain divinities' names from country to country, from region to region, from tribe to tribe. So I'd gone with sort of an idea like that, and that was very, very prevalent in the actual game that I used to run that became this. Very prevalent, the different names, the different appearances. One divinity, say, appearing to the satyrs like a satyr, and they all think that's a satyr, or to humans like a human, or to whatever, and coming with different names of being the same divinity, and maybe even being changed just a little bit to cater better to them. I thought there's a little bit of integration of that, and I thought that I might not want to do that. I didn't want to. I wanted to make the game accessible, not inaccessible. I didn't want to write, being in time. I wanted to write a tome that wasn't going to be turgid, that wasn't going to be inaccessible, because people are going to reject it. Like, oh, I don't want to sit here and it's too much. That's the level my mind likes to function on, that sort of thing, with a tremendous level of detail. So that was something I constantly try to be careful of, not to go too deep onto things. And at certain places, I definitely went very deep. Most of those seem to be kind of celebrated. A lot of people really seem to have enjoyed those, but I try to be careful where I interjected depth. So that's sort of I guess, a vestigial remainder of that idea. Simply because when the books came out, a lot of these things I wrote like the whole basically just about the whole game. All the books that are out now, I wrote pretty much at the same time. I didn't write one book and then go to the next. I wrote all of them, and I went, okay, I got loads of stuff here. How do I assemble this horde of stuff into books? So it was more that way. And I had a whole bunch of completely different ideas to how I might do it. Initially, I'll just share this with you guys. There was going to be it was going to be divided by continents instead of by um, well, the way I did it, it would have been, like the Malika book, the Katik book, the Epiphanul book, and just putting like the base system probably in the Epiphanul book, and then detailing species that are there. Like here's your monsters, here's your men, here's your animals that are there. Here's the other one. Here's the other one. And then maybe even doing like a fourth one just for the island chains. Upon the Great Sea or something like that. Upon Leviathan's face, or whatever. So that was a strong idea. I almost went with that idea because I had the material, and then it was a process of assembling them, getting an artwork, getting things, getting pencil stuff colored, all that sort of thing. Came down to an issue there. So uh, a lot of things were that came out later were written way before. Even some stuff that hasn't come out yet was written before lots of stuff that's in even the Saga book or 77 Thrones. So I would do things different ways, and I try to carefully do things different ways. So a few things, got pushed forward or were missed in editing to kind of smooth out. Um, and that would basically be your explanation as to how some of those things came out. But at the same point, I think it gives it sort of a grittierness, which I like. I didn't want to have something that was really corporate. It looked corporate and polished. I wanted to have something that was more reminiscent of like an older genre of gaming that I think might be attractive to those old, basic 70 style Dungeons and Dragons players, 70 styles, 80 styles Dungeons and Tunnels and Trolls, or those old Cthulhu players, that sort of thing, where it had that sort of grittiness that a real world thing would have, and much like I explained with the different tribes and city states and such. So it was consciously designed to be that way, and then some of these things I think slipped through in cleanup practices, and I can't remember if I consciously wanted that to go out that way at that time or not. The amount of editorial decisions that I had to make are unbelievable. And a question I always get, I'm going to just throw another question out there that I always get is, I want to write a role playing game, this and that. And my answer is always don't. Unless you plan to sacrifice about 4 years of your life, you will not come up with a role playing game that's going to be, and I mean solid time, that's going to have any reason for being there. Anyone can make a role playing game that is cardboard, but if you want to have something solid, substance that fulfills a different role within the Ring of Fire, fulfills the role of creating a fantasy game that is immersive and cinematic in a way that no other game ever was before it. And I needed a game like that. I wanted to make it for me because that's how I wanted a game, and I knew a lot of other people out there, probably enormous numbers of people in the gaming community that haven't even found it yet, want a game that way. And I wanted to create a vehicle for that because I love role playing games. I love the hobby. I want to see it thrive. I want to see it become larger with more people having fun because it's so fucking much fun. And I don't want to keep that level of fun from anybody. So that was my idea. And again, if you want to do it, unless you have a tremendous amount of time to do it and you have great people on board, I have a ton of great people. I mean, the idea was mine, and even that idea was supplemented by lots of reining in from other people, lots of supplemental ideas from other people, and of course, wonderful artwork and discussions and bouncing off. Even of course, Lou here, definitely influential, and lots of people out there as sounding boards, as play testers, as artists, as people who pitched me this concept or that concept, or told me that might be too far, or let's organize this way, or let's edit things out, or let's create. Just so many people who did such wonderful things. So a lot of people, of course, I'm the face of the game, but a lot of people contributed to all parts of the body, the hands, the vertebrae, the nervous system, if you will, even the white blood cells. So yeah, so there you go, Mr. Microphone Man.
All right. Now, the next question revolves around souls. Now, it is quite clear that the people in Quebec-Thiel, people of flesh bound, have souls. But do animals have souls? Do spirits have souls? What is a soul? How is it made?
Well, I'll tell you this: nobody has more soul than James Brown. But that aside, animals. Okay, let's put it this way: to be sapient, you need an intelligence of 4. You're not sapient without an intelligence of 4, and 4 ain't real good. But you, okay, it works like this. There is a finite amount of material that would be constructed and considered as soul. Soul is, there's something that I don't want to get into, and I might put them in menagerie. Some of these might just be secrets I take to the graves with me. The initial of what a soul is, the raw substance of a soul, if you will, baby, is something that comes out of that same ancient primordial sea of chaos upon which is the birthing place of the void, or is the void, or who can know? And this from such which does a soul come. A soul in itself is part of spirit, and spirits are the same thing. They're made of the same stuff as souls. And in reality, everything really is a spirit. Flesh, again, is the abomination. So there is sort of a demi-Brahmin concept working here. There is an oversoul, sort of, and it's broken. And some of those shards are put into sapient things. Some of those shards sit around and wait for a long time. And divinities are even able to capture shards of these things. It's the same soul. Think of a soul as like a memory card, and then it has something imprinted upon it, data, right? And that's your life, that's your personality. So you have like different programs and different software that are working together, right? And that most of that, not all of it, most of that gets scrubbed away by Amalist, but there's still sort of like a backup in there where eventually all of that can be accessed for a reason. Now, there are, of course, those defective souls, and I think, God, I think it makes a great fucking character, who remember stuff, and that will definitely be coming to a game near you, played by your main man, who remembers things going back, and can do all, can come all kinds of different ways. So that's a fucking wonderful thing. But that's a soul that wasn't, something went wrong with, probably MLS scrubbing it. So the process is like this: you die, your soul is taken, hopefully for you, by something to amylase, but that might be a Zoust or an Ambira or any of their many harbingers and psychopomps. Amylase scrubs you and hands you to the forge of Tehul. Now, Tehul generally takes into account what your divinity wants you to be. So there's actually input. So Tehul is reaching out and getting that information from the divinity you worshipped, or perhaps the divinity that made you, and then recasting you. Typically are recasting the same species. Now, let's look at the Book of the Dead. There's all kinds of stuff that's not going to happen for anymore. At least maybe. So you are cast into a different soul. Of course, we saw what happened when the soul information was left a little too strongly on the souls, and Habapophis created the Vigish. So things can happen there. This is relevant. This is important. This is data. But your soul is washed. Your soul is found. Your soul is washed. Your soul is beaten into its new form. And then your soul is rebirthed through Lacendarnia. And you are allowed to live again without the trouble, the pain, the haunting horrors of the past. That's gone. Now, there's a whole bunch of exceptions to this, like a certain Octavius will now be an exception when that soul is just so tainted and damaged by something certain, or that soul is tagged or marked or has some sort of defect that comes along the line, right? So these happen. The gods are not all knowing or all powerful or all perfect. They're the elder creators. So it creates a very interesting situation there. But a situation like that gets into the interpersonal relationship of these divinities and how that circle of life comes about. Now, animals do have souls. They don't have much of them, though. Tiny fucking amounts. Like, if, say, you had like a small hand mirror, right? And then that animal gets the tiniest little shard, almost like a piece of sand or like a tiny sliver. It depends on the level of intellect of the animal. A soul of a snail is not going to be the same soul of a wolf, for example. So it's continuing going up, and that same soul material could be reforged in other ways, all depending on the will and want of those divinities that are involved. So it's a chain. The divinities communicate with each other quite often, um, particularly those that like each other or those that have essentially kind of think of a lot of it almost as a job, right? So you got like down in sub basement 4, Kahul's down there, and he's calling up to Ajira up on floor 7, and he's like, Ajira, I need your help with this, and Ajira's like, what do you want now? And they speak, and a verdict is brought back, and that verdict is put into place. So that's done quite often, and then the form is brought back. There can be certainly interesting things when you find out, hey, I'm a human and this and that, and then it's like, ooh, wait a minute, yeah, I used to be an orc, and I was this guy, and wow, whoa. So those are the kind of things you can bring into a game, man. This deja vu, this resurrection of the well of memory, the reaccessing of the soul. The soul bears those stories. It's just the fact that you can't get to them. Like almost like imagine like you have like a computer cord, but that computer cord is unplugged. So the software is working in one way and not in another, but you could make it work in the other way if you knew how to reconnect it. So it's definitely the process of a soul. I don't know if you really want me to go into the whole process of ghost and that sort of thing as well, but there's really a lot that you can do with that as a flame tender to really create interesting stories. I mean, think of those stories of the underworld, of resurrecting ghosts, of finding people, of pledging their soul, of undying love. I mean, you can think of many tales from mythology. Fucking even Dracula. I mean, my favorite novel, my favorite character in literature, of course, is Dracula. So, and I think you can do some wonderful sort of pseudo Dracula kind of stories with the whole soul deal. So yeah, does that answer your question, or do you want me to go into any more detail in any area?
That does.
Okay.
That answers it quite tremendously. Now we're going to skip away from souls. We're going to go to the smartest things in existence, the trolls. Don't let anyone else say who's smarter. They're the smartest things. They know how to protect Kvegathel of reality. They got the plans for you. But what this question is what was their highest technology that the trolls and the Holdre reached before the gods came in and did their thing?
All right, I think it's very interesting that you're the first person that, I don't know if you got that from someone else, you're the first person to ask me that. Now, those who played in my home group know that is really high. I don't want to go too much into that because I think we're going to put some of that menagerie. Definitely to a science fiction level. The trolls, if you will remember, created clocks back when there weren't other species. So that's a long time ago. And they did a lot of other things. Nagus is, of course, well, many of the trolls, many of the under trolls, and many of the there are ancient kingdoms of under trolls where there are things that have rotted out that are of tremendous potency. Kind of think of it almost like a Thundar the Barbarian, but if that happened 12,000 years in the future, right? The world falling apart. So there are tremendous things. I don't want to purely speculate, but players have found things. So if you want to do that whole kind of Planet of the Apes, Slender the Barbarian, but futuristic, all of that exists in those lands of the trolls, or of the orcs, I should say, and those things exist. And my God help you if you go on the other side of the mirror. That ass is done. Just believe in it because it believes in you. So extremely high. The intellect of particularly the hollow trolls who are the smartest is unfathomable, and Nagus is the smartest of they. Not if they were average, Nagus is like they're fucking Stephen Hawking.
It's almost impossible to think or at least to put that into a game or role play that out. that amount of intelligence.
Absolutely.
But that is the grandeur of that is Nogus. Now, a fun question for you, and for everyone else. Let's be honest here. How when you were thinking of the listed languages, how did you envision them sounding like? What accents they had, or if they had no accents?
Okay, so I kind of thought about real world languages, and I kind of thought about different accents of people that I've heard and the different cadence. Now, all of them I wanted to really be kind of supernatural up, and like if someone out there picks Within Ring of Fire up to make a wonderful television show, which would fucking destroy in the ratings, I'm talking to you, Showtime. Holler at your main man. Now, if we had something like that, and they were mentally luxurious enough to hire your main man on set, which they damn well better be, or you ain't getting it. So I would say, look, I would look at the actors and actors. I say, now look here, man. Now come down here. And when they came down here, I'd say, man, you need to understand what these languages need to sound like. And Moolish is definitely very fucking Russian. It's just it's Russian, but also kind of a happy Russian. It's not. It's that kind of that Russian. Um, so I kind of look at it like that, but that would just be the very beginning, the very vestige. This is not Russian. It's a very unique. It's its own language. It has sort of a dark somberness to it. It has a joy, a light in it, uh, a heavy breath and whistling uh, to it. A Jiren is very much a Gaelic sort of inspired language. It's very rhythmical, but it's very dark and melodic. Ajiran is definitely supposed to be the most beautiful of the languages, just in the way it sounds. It's the language of poetry. Uh, Again, remember, even the dark things have their place. Everything is in of itself. There's a good aspect to that. I suppose everything you might want to say. So that's, I think, important to know. Besides that, you have Satonian, which has a very lazy sort of keel to it. I'm going to play it, I could said eventually, and you guys will kind of see sort of the falling in and out of sleep, the oh, wait a minute, that sort of thing. And Aramanian is this just horror. Like it sounds almost like someone's just slicing and ripping at you. It's language of primordial silence, and it's horrifying. Like that definitely needs to be put across. And I sure to sort of get that over in your game. It's not like, I mean, I'm saying things and people are like, oh, if if you know what it is, you definitely get it. If you don't, it's like fucking verbal blasphemy. It's like you're inciting things that are in themselves against life. It should come across more profane than anything we're capable of imagining.
Hmm. And I know there's been some around the table discussion in my group about the accents of Farum.
Oh yeah. Well, we have officially canonized Farum, as I was always quite loath to some of the ways the doors were done, and Farum are very rundown, derelict, degenerate people. And some of initially, I almost brought this into the game, but Farum were in of themselves. They'd lost their language. They could speak it, but they didn't know how to write it anymore. And like whole plot lines, like people trying to help the family, they were just so. I made them less degenerate than they actually were before in my world. But yeah, they didn't even remember how to even read or write their own language anymore, and they were just fucking even more like set upon it. And it got them so much sympathy. I didn't expect it to, but the players were just like, oh, poor Farum. And they're like, and I kind of imagine that Tehulian sounds sort of like that. It's kind of a Latin based kind of thing. However, has gone through a bit of a metamorphosis in the degenerate quality and that disgusting degenerate sort of Louisianan cult. Only imagine perhaps in H.P. Lovecraft's short story Call of Cthulhu. We're talking about Spender Legrassi, if you will. I mean, these are degenerate, almost swamp-like folk. You go get that! You go get that here! You go get it! Get that boy! And I believe that perhaps even the dirtiest, dirt-minded individual should come in and give it a proper explanation of the grammar of the Hooligan and such. But there is very much a proper Hooligan, and then there's what Ferrum speak, and that is very, very, very different. So we gonna get that. We gonna get that right there. You gonna come down there. You gonna get goddamn humans. So perhaps I have done at least some vague, pathetic attempted justice at the true Hooligan of the Ferrums, but very much that is how they sound. They are just slummy, despicable, getting their teeth knocked out. That's the Ferrum, man, and they love it. So next question.
Mm-hmm. Now, we know that the first human men, are ageless. What about the first human wives that Pelkin made for them? Are they ageless?
Well, there was also a human that is not anyone's wife. She is not of such a thing. The mistake, the Kylie flame bathed, and she's ageless, as are all of the first generation humans, all the women, all the men. So the answer is yes.
All right. Now, how does the world of Kvegathale support so many carnivores without, depleting itself out? Say, as an example, the Sarouche Horde.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say deer. But really, you need to understand, Mother Thurga provides. She is most kind. So Thurga, through her avatar, is with them, leads them in their holy pilgrimage over to much things. And that which is built there in Gatik, largely also not by humans, many humans, of course, continuously get eaten, is devoured by those same Sarouche. There are many lizard animals, often being created. There are many, many types of species of lizard that have gone extinct, as Mother Yura must constantly provide for the hungry mouths of her horde, which will devour even each other, even their own chins, should it come down to it. And they have mating grounds and areas where they'll bury their eggs and return to and find the little Sarouches string around in the trees and in the underbrush, and they'll grab them up as they get bigger and bring them with them, educate them, teach them the ways of the horde. Glory to the horde. Remember, it's very important to not look at it through the lens of the real world. The divine are incredibly powerful, and they are very much there, and they take care of what is theirs. Because if they don't, they themselves will become much weaker.
Now, perhaps one of our last questions is how, say, the ogres and their reproduction rate seems so extremely high. It's a wonder why they don't just overpopulate a city like Bale quicker than humans populated. Heck, do they kill each other that often?
Simple answer, yes. Yes, they do. You got to remember, you got some young, brash, upcoming ogre, right? And then he tries to challenge his chieftain, but his chieftain wears a chainmail equipment. In fact, it's the big bad booty daddy and picks him up and drives him, puts him in the Steiner recliner and breaks his back and then eats him. He ain't going to have no more damn kids. And that happens quite a bit. And ogres are egalitarian. The men will fight the women will fight the women. The kids will jump in it. They don't give a damn. There'll be family brawls. A 5-cycle-year-old will just be rolled over. It doesn't matter. Ogres will eat whoever they want. And ogres do become hungry. Ogres live in generally conditions that are about the same as Ferrum these days. But they've always kind of done that. And they have lots of populations that die of disease. Lots of their children die early on. It's a very sad, rough, hard life, and that's why they are the common man of Kvegathale, working hard for the man. If we all know about an ogre's wage, That is something that is earned by them over and over again. They're also one of the most likely to be enslaved species, which generally takes that ogre out of the population production. So yes, there's lots of wars and battles they get in. When the tribes get big, they usually begin to beat each other to death, decreasing their population. When the game gets scarce, they start eating each other. So there are an enormous amount of dangers to ogres, especially young ogres, especially old ogres, especially strong ogres, especially weak ogres. All ogres are always constantly in danger, and generally from each other. It's a fucking rough ass hood to live in the ogre village.
And thank you for that answer, for that question, and all the wonderful answers that you've given on this wonderful interview. Now, throw it back to you if you have any final words to say before we close out.
$75 PDF bundle still available. Hit up Your Main Man, Andrew Wood, on Facebook. There's a link right on my page. Come shout at me. Let me know you want to get. And that includes every PDF ever to be made. There's 5 out now, and there's more coming. We discussed that already. That's for Within the Ring of Fire. You're going to get those shit to you before they're on sale. So you'll be the first, you'll be the cool kid in your crib for some time Within the Ring of Fire style. Run those games, tell those tales, have sagas the likes of which your players have never seen before. If you're looking to spend your money, don't waste it. Don't give it to the corporate giants who give you not. Send it to Your Main Man, and you will be receiving even more products than ever before. The more we can do this, the more we can write, the more we can get stuff out for you. Support local gaming from people that love gaming. This is about trying to help the hobby, trying to move forward in the direction that I see is going to make our hobby stay around forever. And that's what I want to. That's what I want to see. I want to have Amalus not scrub the soul blind and come back thousands of years in the future and see gaming going even stronger than ever before. And that is something I'm passionate about my whole life. I love fucking gaming. It's hard to imagine if anyone would love it more than I do. I fucking love this thing we call RPG. And yeah, you can get it on drivethrurpg.com. Where you can get all the books in hardback, softback, PDF, and in bundles. And again, you get that PDF bundle for me, everything that ever be released Within the Ring of Fire before it comes out to anyone else, with some special offers and special items as well, for only $75. You'll never beat that deal. That is me wanting you to enjoy this product and to enjoy this with your friends. That's the price of that. So you can also go to Cafe Press, to our store on Cafe Press. You can get shirts like this. Within the Ring of Fire, they come in a whole bunch of different colors. You can get hats, like I didn't put my Within the Ring of Fire hat on, but you get everything. And you can get my main man stuff. I'm a fighter, Barbarian Horde stuff, all of it over there. We put it on like every kind of product you can mention. You want bumper stickers, big poster maps. You want T-shirts. Hell. Man, Alex put them on thongs. You got your main man facing a thong, and some people have ordered that. And guess what? Your wife or girlfriend will be surprised at the ladies out there. I mean, come on, really. So, thank you so much, Lou, for this time, for this interview, for this stepping into for the Barbarian Horde. Glory to the Horde, and we appreciate each and every one out of you that has given that love and respect to the RPG hobby. Everyone out there that's picked up Within the Ring of Fire, who's gotten into the grassroots, who says we could save RPG, make RPG great again, baby, if you will. And we really do, honestly, very much appreciate all you guys. It's a very serious remark for all the help, for all the wonderful compliments, for all the fine reviews, for everyone that's out there sharing it, pushing it, everyone out there that loves role playing. Keep the games coming, baby, and just know that your main man will always have your back.